All right. Good evening, everyone. Again, if you can take a minute to read the text that's on your screen about how the meeting will be run today. We're learning new things since we're doing everything virtually now. So for those of you joining us from the public, which there are a lot of you, if you can take a minute to go into the chat box and type in your name, and if there's an affiliation, your affiliation as well. This is how we'll be doing attendance for non-committee members. We are recording the meeting as part of our open meeting law requirements. And after the presentations, the chair will take questions and comments from the committee members first, and then we will open it up to members of the public, and we'll be using the raise hands function that comes with Zoom. So if you're on a computer or other type of device, you just go into the participants tab at the bottom of your screen and go to the bottom of the list and click the button that says raise hand. And then we'll know that you want to make a comment. Comments will be timed 2 minutes. If you are on the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand. To mute yourself and unmute yourself on your desktop, you just click the microphone button or hold down your space bar. On the phone, you hit *6 to mute and unmute yourselves. We are going to leave everybody, including committee members, muted during the presentation so that there's no background noise. Jackie, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. So it's already 6:34, and I'm going to start the meeting. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Community Board 3 Land Use Committee meeting for Thursday, May 14, 2020. And I already said it before, but I just want to officially thank Michael Marino again. Michael Marino is our first vice chair. He has been taking a lot of his personal time to help us with this Zoom technology. And I cannot speak on behalf of all the committee chairs, but I think we all share the same appreciation for Michael. Again, thank you so much, Michael. So the first item on our agenda tonight is to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which is February. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Olympia. Any?
I second.
Second.
All in favor? So
Aye.
Thank you, Olympia. So because we need to, we probably better to do roll calling so that we know who is present at this committee meeting. Michael Perlis, can you do the roll calling, please?
Sure. Is Linda here?
I'm here.
Thank you, Linda.
Hi, Linda.
Michael Perlis is here. Dominic Berg.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Dominic. Jonathan Chu.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Herman Hewitt. Has anyone seen Herman? Okay. Trevor Holland.
He's not on.
Yeah, I'm searching the participants. I don't see his name. Okay, Lisa, I know you are here. Olympia, I know you are here. Damaris Reyes.
But aren't we voting on the motion to adopt the minutes as well?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing. So I'm sorry. I apologize. I should go back. Sorry. So Jackie Wong, how do you vote?
Yes.
Linda Jones, how do you vote?
Yes.
Michael Perlis, I vote yes. Dominic Berg, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jonathan Chu, how do you vote?
Jonathan.
Hold on.
Yes.
Thank you, Jonathan. Herman Hewitt is still not here. Trevor Holland is still not here. Okay, Lisa, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Olympia, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Olympia. Damaris Reyes.
She doesn't seem to be on.
Good to hear. Yes, thank you. Steve Herrick, how do you vote? I don't think Steve's on either. And then Tim Laughlin, how do you vote? I
I
don't see.
don't think he's here yet. Thank you, Michael. Any opposition to the minutes? And no one take abstention. Okay, so the other item on the agenda is 70 Mulberry Street, and I expect this is going to be a very passionate discussion. But before I go on, I just want to lay out the order of the meeting tonight. So I see we have some politicians with us tonight, so I'm gonna let them speak first, as we always do, and each speaker would have 2 minutes, and then followed by DCAS presentation. And after that, I will let committee members to ask questions. And after the committee member questions, then the general public to make comments. And tonight I'm seeing all the tenants of the burned down buildings are also here. So out of respect, I'm gonna let them speak first in the general public comment session. And again, each speaker would have 2 minutes to speak. And after that, that would be the committee discussion. So first, I would like to invite our Council Member Margaret Chin to speak. Margaret, it's nice to have you tonight. Would you want to say a few words?
Sure, Jackie. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. And I hope that everyone is safe and well. And thank you to the Community Board 3 members and the Land Use Committee for having me speak today. And also thank you to DCAS and the Mayor's Office for being here to do the presentation. 70 Mulberry Street is a neighborhood cultural institution that has served our community since 1900. During its first 120 years of existence, it went from being a former public school to housing some of our important community nonprofit organizations. I remember going to PS 23 when I first landed in Chinatown. And these nonprofits are so critical in our community. CPC's Chinatown Senior Center, Chinatown Manpower Project, CMP, HT Dance Company, Museum of Chinese in America, MOCA, and United East Athletic Association. Since the fire on January 23rd that devastated the structure of the building, my office has been working diligently to assist these nonprofits in retrieval and relocation, and to urge the city to engage in a community process to discuss the future of the site. And tonight is the first step of the engagement process. And I remember the mayor coming down to Chinatown, promising the community that he will rebuild the center for us. The Chinatown community has endured significant hardship from both the pandemic and the loss of a major community resource. As we look towards the future for 70 Mulberry, it is important that we plan for a facility that serves both the current and future tenants alike. Chinatown deserves an ADA accessible, centrally located community facility. And with the proper planning and some vision, we are ensuring the future generation of Chinatown and Lower Manhattan families, nonprofits, and community partners will have a place to thrive. And I really look forward to the discussion tonight. I really wanted to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Next, I would like to invite our Senator Brian Kavanagh to say a few words. Senator?
Thank you very much. And I echo many of the sentiments of Margaret Chin. First of all, in thanking the community board for convening this. We were having conversations, the elected official and the community board representatives with the city about how they were going to move forward. There was some concern that they were taking steps that I think people in the community had not fully had the opportunity to understand and appreciate. We had asked for a special forum on this, but of course, bringing this to the community board, which plays this role in so many important issues in our community is really a great and appropriate way to do this. So appreciate all of you adding this very important issue to the agenda. And I also do appreciate DCAS being here to present this evening. I'm not gonna, Margaret has spoken so eloquently about the significance of this building, this community. I obviously do not represent Chinatown nearly and not spent nearly as much time in Chinatown as well as Margaret Chin, but I was there the evening of the fire and have seen in many conversations both the real powerful significance of this building to this community, and of course the many organizations that were housed there and continue to be critical parts of the community. So I'm not going to sort of talk about what my thoughts or priorities would be for this, other than to say that I am very committed to making sure that any decisions that are made are fully vetted and have real opportunity for the community to have input and at times when it matters along the process, and that it be a transparent process, and that our community is respected as the city moves forward. But again, thank you all for being here and for the opportunity to speak with all of you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for the support you can give us. And next, I would like to invite our Assemblywoman, Yuni New, to say a few words.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to say a couple of words. I love seeing everybody here, and I just want to say thank you to our community board and our community board who worked very hard to get this together. And I want to say a couple of words of thanks to all of the tenants who have been in constant conversation with us on DCAS. And I also wanted to say that I really appreciate the words that Margaret spoke, and also what Brian had just said. Right now, I think that one of the biggest things we just want to make sure of is that, of course, we know how precious and how important this site is to our community, and still is. It's literally in the center of our community, and it's like the heart, right? And it's a community space, and I think that one of the things that our community had gotten promised by the mayor was to make sure that it stayed our community space, and that we would be able to have what it was back. And I think that right now there is a lot of distrust. I think that we have to address it head on, right? I think that the fact of the matter is there's some distrust in our community, and folks have gotten their hearts broken before by promises made that were broken. And I think that we have to make sure that we address that fear, and we have to make sure that people actually see what's going on. And I know that folks wanted to have a town hall, and we pushed for it. I want to say that I commend Brian and Margaret and Nidia for pushing with all of us together to try to get that town hall together, and we're still working on it, and we're still trying to get that date, because I think more than ever, I think it's really important that we have community input and a time for us to really be able to talk about things together and be able to address some of the issues that we have. And when people are seeing cranes coming out and like lifting things out, and when there's demo happening, people are afraid that that promises are being broken. And so I think that we just need to head on say it out loud, and also be able to have these conversations very straightforwardly, because we have said that over and over again that we want to see like what's going on. And so DCAS today is coming and presenting for us, and I just want to say thank you to DCAS for being willing to do that. And I think that's really important that folks see for themselves with their eyes like what's going on inside the building, because obviously what we see is the facade, and then we don't get to see what's inside. And so I would like to be able to have the community be able to give input. And what Brian said is very true, that we need transparency and accessibility and an open dialogue for us in the city. So thank you so much to all of the electeds, and thank you so much to all of the community members that have written, have fought, and have expressed their concerns. And I wanted to say thank you again to Susan Stetcher and the Community Board 3 for all of your efforts in being able to put all of this together for us, because this is the first time that we're able to have this conversation due to COVID. And I think that it's really, really important that we are still very much a part of this process, even without being able to gather together and be able to discuss it the way we usually would. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next, I have Iris from our Congress Lady Nydia Velasquez's office. Iris, would you like to say a few words? Iris, are you on phone or you are?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. I'm glad that we're having this meeting today. It's really important, and I want to say thank you to our local elected officials for their input and their commitment and making sure, that anything happening in the future of 70 Mulberry Street is being transparent and is real community input, collaboration, and feedback. So I want to thank you on behalf of Congresswoman Velasquez. She's right now in DC fighting, for making sure we have and we secure additional funding. They working on making sure we receive additional funding for our heroes, like the first responders, and another round of 1,200 stimulus check for our community and for all Americans. That being said, I just want to thank everyone for having this meeting tonight, and looking forward to working with the community and all the elected officials on behalf of the Congresswoman.
Thank you, Iris. Thank you so much. In the last few weeks, I have been hearing a lot of community members asking so many questions about this building, and there are also some speculations on the street, but I think some of them may not be true. And tonight we are very happy to have a representative from DCAS to give us an update on the demolition of the building and also tell us what to expect for this site in the future. So do we have the team from the DCAS here? Carmine, I see you on the screen, and I think Quentin is going to be the presenter, right?
Yes. How are you?
How are you, Quentin?
Doing good, doing good. So I'm going to share my screen.
And while Quentin is sharing his screen, I just want to let all the participants know he is the Executive Deputy Commissioner of DCAS. I hope I get this correctly, right?
Yes, that's correct. Again. All right. Can everybody see the screen?
I can see the screen.
Perfect. So good evening, and thank you, Chair, board members and elected officials and the public for the opportunity to appear tonight. I'm Quentin Ains, and I'm to serve as the Executive Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. I'm joined tonight by my colleague and Chief Engineer, Joe Wagner. Together, we'll go through the status of the building and the current activities that are happening on site. After our presentation, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. So to start, I wanted to provide some information on the building. So as we all know, 70 Mulberry is a city-owned building located on the northeast corner of Mulberry and Bayard Street in Chinatown. This is a 5-story building that has approximately 41,000 square feet. It was condemned by the city in 1889 for the development of a public school, PS 23.
Ooh, look at you go with those birds. With the birds, with the birds.
I think if folks could mute their... Thank you. So as I was saying, it was condemned by the city in 1889 for the development of a public school. That was PS 23, as I know so much of you have talked about. After the school was closed, the property was transferred to DCAS in 1977. And as we all know, the devastating event on January 23rd, there was a 5-alarm fire at the building. During that 5-alarm fire, the top 3 floors of the building were destroyed, and the remainder of the building was significantly damaged. Immediately after the fire, DOB issued a vacate order stating that the building was unsafe to occupy. And now I also wanted to talk a little bit about the occupants of the building. So as we all know, there are 5 nonprofits located at 70 Mulberry that provide community services to local residents. Chinatown Senior Center, who operates a senior center, the United East Athletic Association, who provides youth services to the community, Museum of Chinese in America, who operates a museum, HT Dance Company, who operates a dance studio, and Chinatown Manpower Project, who provides educational and training services. And shortly after the fire, we worked with them and neighboring community organizations to locate temporary space for them to continue their service. And I wanted to say where they currently are now. Senior center patrons were accommodated in nearby senior centers. MoCA was able to expand its use at its primary location on 215 Center Street. Chinatown Manpower Project relocated its operations to a nearby facility, 96 Baxter Street. And the United East Athletic Association and HT Dance Center were provided temporary administrative space in another DCAS building, 115 Christie. In addition, over the past couple of months, DCAS and other city agencies have worked directly with the tenants to retrieve as much as possible their salvageable property from the building. Now, this included over 95% of MoCA's cultural and historical archives. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to publicly thank the tenants for their steadfast patience and partnership throughout this process, as well as all the other city agencies that have made this possible. Now, as we get into more of the details of the building's conditions, I wanted to start off with a very high-level assessment. Now, as I mentioned before, the building is currently unsafe to occupy, and the top floors have an immediate a danger to the public life and safety. There are structural and environmental concerns with the building. The utilities and infrastructure of the building are inoperable and unsalvageable, and the building would have to be rehabilitated to comply with current codes. Now, I would like to turn it over to our chief engineer, Joe Wagner, who will go into more detail on the assessment of the damage by floor. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Quentin.
Good.
Okay. I don't say, okay, on the fifth floor and including the roof, as you can see from the photos here, that basically it was destroyed by the fire. The structure itself is basically a wood structure. The upper floors are completely wood floor joist. You do have masonry. The perimeter walls and the perimeter walls are all masonry, as you can see, with the Wyeth and plaster finish on the interior walls, which now are so waterlogged. They're all the walls all the way down the building have mold in the back base of the walls. All the floor joists, as you can see from the pictures, what are remaining, they're all charred. They're waterlogged. They're unusable. And that would be the fifth floor. You can see it's devastated. Most of the demo for the fifth floor is, I would say 95% done. Would be done with the demo of the fifth floor by the end of the week, the beginning of next week. Okay, let's go to the fourth floor. The fourth floor has similar situation. The framing's the same. It's cast iron columns and girders, wood floor joists, as you can see above. The floors are all wood, tongue and groove wood boards that are all deteriorated. They were all warped. If you could get on the second floor, the first floor, you could walk on the floors and you can see that the floors are all buckled up and they're really all tripping hazards. The ceilings are all coming down, light fixtures. All the electrical service to the whole building is, and you don't see it in this vid, but when you go to the low floors, you can see some of the cables hanging down. All the electrical service is finished. You cannot use it again. The whole building has to be rewired. Going to the third floor. Third floor, you can see it's evidence. You could actually, again, you can still see through the floors that of the extent of the fire. You can see the cabling hanging down. Nothing that you see here is usable. You can see that we got shoring that's going up to support the floor, so when the people are working, nobody's falling through the floors. And so we have shores that go all the way down through the basement. As you can see in the other photos, the ceilings, the hunk ceilings are coming down. As we're trying to take out some archives, I tried to nail in some anchors so I could hang some light fixtures. The wood is so saturated, the floor joist, that you couldn't actually, the nails pulled right out and the lights fell. So I wound up using stands. So you could tell that you can't use these floor joists, and that's basically a whole system that's there. Going to the second floor. Again, you can see the ceilings, everything is this with water. There's a tremendous amount of mold in the building now. The building is open to the sky. besides all the water, I mean, we were there 2 weeks after, and we were on the first floor, and we were walking in water. Quentin also, we were all both there walking in water. You could see the water damage to all the ceilings, the mold behind the walls. So all those walls have to be ripped down, even the perimeter walls behind. Anything that was plaster walls, all of those walls have to come down. The duct systems, any duct work, any of that's contaminated. There's between the asbestos that, even though the asbestos wasn't friable, none of the duct work is usable. On the first floor, again, you just see a pile of debris. You can see everything's charred, and you can see even how the columns, some of the columns kicked in. Again, we have those floors shored. We did empty some of we did clean up a lot of the debris out of there, so we could do some of the demo. And again, it's shored all the way into the basement. Let's go to the next one. The basement, you can see some of the shoring that's up there. There is a concrete slab in one area that is substantial, but aside from that concrete slab, all that duct work, the boiler, none of that equipment is usable. And it all has to be replaced. All the piping throughout the building then would have to be replaced to meet the new codes. You got more than, by the building departments, gave us a destroy notice up to the 3rd floor, which means just to make it safe, so nothing falls off the building. It's not safe to walking, it's just safe that they don't feel anything will fall out into the street to hurt somebody. But that doesn't mean it's a safe building. That only means that it could stand there for a while, but it's got to be protected. And the more the water goes in, the more damage that happens to the building. Nothing that we see is really salvageable. Now, because of that, you got more than 50% of the building that has to be renovated. You would have to apply to the new building code, which means that it has to take all the, which means the columns, the beams and everything would have to be able to take a seismic load. It would have to take all the energy code has to be all accompanied. ADA has to be applied to, elevators have to be put in the building. All of this would have to be done to the existing building no matter what you do. So there really isn't anything I could see that you really could save to reuse again. That's really a quick summary of what's there and what we're doing right now.
Cool. Thank you, Joe.
So we are hearing a lot of screaming in the background.
So now to touch a little on redevelopment. So the mayor committed following the fire that the city will rebuild the site and return the tenants to the building, and that commitment remains. Given our assessment, the city decided to move forward with the full demolition of the building by taking down the existing structure and removing all the related debris from the site. This work is scheduled to be completed by October of this year. And also regarding the rebuilding process, the administration will engage in a community visioning process with local residents and stakeholders to determine what this rebuilding looks like. And we look forward to partnering with all of you in this process. And that is our presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your time, and I now turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Quentin, and also Joe. Next, I'm going to open up for the Land Use Committee members to ask questions. And so I see some chats are going on the chat box. And one question I think everybody wants to ask is about the investigation of the fire. So I wonder if there's anything DCAS can share with us tonight.
Sure. So according to the FDNY investigation, the fire was the result of an adverse electrical event on the 3rd and 4th floors.
Okay. And any details you can share, like more than that?
So if folks would like to request a copy of the fire investigation report, they can go to FDNY's website to obtain the report. And Mr. Chair, I can also send you, actually, since we're on Zoom, I will drop into the chat box in just a few seconds the link that folks can go to, and they can read the full report there.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Quentin. Olympia, I see you have a hand. Let me unmute you.
She can unmute herself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did it. So, hi, thank you for the presentation. I mean, one thing, there was a little bit of lack of clarity. If I understand you correctly, you said that structurally, only the top 2 floors, 4th and 5th, were compromised, but that the structure of the rest of the building is good. Is that what you said?
No, ma'am. So the entire building was compromised, as we showed in the pictures, and since we have some technology.
Sorry,
so,
I'm an architect by training. When I say it was structurally compromised, are you presenting us a building that you are planning to demolish 100%, or are you presenting us with a building that you believe there is complete compromise, like the last 2 floors need to be eliminated, but the rest of the structure can be refurbished?
Gotcha, I understand your question. So we are recommending and moving forward with the full demolition. So we will be taking down the entire floor, the entire building. Yes, ma'am.
Great, that was not clear in your presentation, sorry. And then the second thing, you said that this was, so you're gonna demolish the entire building, and then in your first slide, you enumerated certain considerations, including the last point that was monetary considerations. Do you wanna elaborate on that slide?
So this is just because it is a city building, we would have to get funding and have received funding to actually demolish the building. In addition, and a part of the revisioning process, these are just things that the city would have to consider.
Thank you.
No problem.
Lisa?
Yeah, first question is, have
Yes, ma'am.
you done any initial consideration of what the maximum floor area could be according to the new code for this property compared to the existing building? Would it be more or less essentially the same?
So no, ma'am. So the current building is about 41,000 square feet. I think it's around 36 to 37 actually usable, that was actually leased space. We have not done a comparison to look at what the future of that space would look like. As I had mentioned before, we would do a kind of visioning process to understand what the community wanted this site to be, look like, and then that we would go from there.
Well, I was really just asking a computation based on the square footage of the site and the FAR and the neighborhood. I don't know what it is offhand. I don't know if anybody does, but I mean, that could be done in like
very
2
quickly,
minutes.
right? And we have, and I personally have, we have not done that, and so I wouldn't be able to tell you on this call.
The second question is then, with this visioning and all the rest, what is your expectation with regard? I know it's early, but give us your general sense of what the timing might be. How long would the visioning be? How long would it take you to make sure you had all the funding in place and that sort of thing before a construction start might happen?
So given the current crisis, we are not prepared to provide the details on the timing on this call, but we will remain in contact with you guys on next steps. As of right now, we do not have an outlined time frame, and so we can be in touch with you on how that develops.
I see.
Thank you. Thank you, Quentin. Do we have any more questions from the committee members?
Yes.
Jackie,
yes.
I put in the chat that maybe Anthony Drummond, who's with us, who does land use for Councilwoman Chin, maybe he knows about the answer about the FAR, because that's very important that Lisa asked.
Jim has.
Shelton has already responded, Olympia, and it's in the chat that it's a FAR 6.0. And Michael Perlis wants to ask the question, Jackie.
Michael?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering if there's been any discussions within DCAS about the conveyance of this land, if there's been discussion about selling this land to a private developer.
So no, we have not had any formal conversations in that regard.
Have any private developers lobbied or reached out to DCAS about that?
No.
Great, thank you. Any more questions from the committee members?
I mean, one more.
Yeah,
Is there
Olympia.
going to be a ULURP if this is being demolished? And is this what we today we can?
No, so Olympia, if this is going to be redeveloped within, like, in compliance with the current zoning, then we don't have to go through ULURP. But if we are doing something different or like beyond or changing the zoning, the current zoning, then we will have to go through ULURP. But I don't know if DCAS have anything to add.
Nope.
Thank you.
So, but in order to understand, because you know, in our community there have been various instances of deed restrictions of places that were previous schools or other things. This location right now, as it is, it would require no ULURP because there are no restrictions if they do it as with the allowable FAR.
So if we are doing it within the allowable FAR, then we don't have to go through. I mean, we don't have to go through ULURP.
And if there's no sale of the property.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so if the city develops it, that's what you mean.
I mean, so
that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
It would need, if it was being sold to a private developer, if there was a conveyance of land, then it would go through ULURP, but otherwise it wouldn't.
The disposition of city properties, I don't think it has to go through ULURP, only if we change the zoning. But I think
no, a conveyance of city land to a private developer would trigger ULURP.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So we're gonna, if there's no more questions from the committee members, I'm gonna go to the public session. So as I mentioned before, out of respect, I'm gonna let the tenants of the building to speak first. And so I'm just gonna go to CMP first. Do we have Hong Lee here? Hong, are you here?
Right here. Hi.
Hi, Hong.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for inviting us to attend this committee meeting. I'm Hong Sheng, the Executive Director of CMP Chinatown Manpower Project. We've been in the building since 1974. CMP is a not-for-profit workforce and economic development organization. Our mission has been helping immigrant communities, immigrant workers to become economically self-sufficient through approaches of helping them to prepare for a career, train for job skills, find jobs, place them into jobs, or help them to start up a business, or help them to become successful in the small business, become self-employed. We've been using the top 3 floors, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors of the building with classrooms for skills training, work readiness, providing workshops on various skills of financial literacy. Of course, a big part is also to teach adult education, adult literacy, mostly with our population English as a second language. And one of the key concerns that we have as tenants of the building is, of course, reassurance from the city that we will be able to go back to the building once the building is redeveloped. And at the current rate that we've been paying, as you know, a lot of the nonprofits in the building are operating on a very, very tight budget, and this building as a community asset allow us to put a majority of our budget into services rather than paying rent. So this is a critical factor for considering us going back to the building. And I think we certainly would appreciate the city and the community board to be receptive in like when you start envisioning we would like a voice. We would like to be able to have our input so that the rebuilding of the 70 Mulberry will take into account the space usage, the need for programming into that plan, so that the building is reflective of the program services that we're providing to the community.
Thank you, Hong.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to go to HT Chen. HT, are you here?
HT, come. He's here.
Hi, Diane.
Yeah.
And my associate Diane Dang going to represent our company.
Okay, so I have something timed to 90 seconds. Until January 23rd, Chen Dance Center served thousands of New Yorkers through performances, classes, workshops for visiting school groups, outreach to hundreds of community children each week, and support for dance artists, local artists, and visiting artists. When 70 Mulberry Street burned, we all mourned the loss of an immense presence in our community. In 1891, PS 23 signified a renaissance of the Lower East Side, from a reputation as a notorious 5 points to a place where generations of immigrant children could receive an education. When it was repurposed into a community center in 1977, a second renaissance occurred. 5 tenant organizations pioneered to provide cultural, educational, and social services to the community. For the next 4 decades, the building was filled with activities 7 days a week, serving children, families, seniors, as well as artists and audiences. To local residents, tourists, and New Yorkers, 70 Mulberry Street was a centerpiece of Chinatown. The historic beauty of the building was noted on the National Registry of Buildings, and all who walked by or entered the building could sense its grace and humanity. The architecture of the building should be preserved so that a third renaissance can take place, with the return of essential services by its 5 tenant organizations who were displaced during the fire, and the blessing of C.B.J. Snyder's vision with the original lower facade as a reminder. We all stand united to restoring these services to the community, to being able to afford to start all over again, and to being stronger together as we oversee leadership and the role of the building to lift up and enlighten new generations of New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Next, I would like to ask Echo Wong from United East Athletic Association to say a few words. Echo? Echo, are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for inviting us and inviting DCAS for this presentation. Echoing Hong and Dion, we are 5 not-for-profit organizations that have been in the community for a long time. United East, I think HT is the earliest tenant, the first tenant that's been there for 40 years. But United East and the rest of the organizations been there for more than close to 40 years. United East occupied the smallest space, but we serve a variety of clients. We have summer programs that serve 300 kids and also train 200 youth to become leaders and community volunteers every year. But we don't limit ourselves to just youth and children. We have a group of members that are 55 and over and still playing soccer with us. And we have the chess team that will come, the senior will come and spend their time at United East at 70 Mulberry Street, room 201. It is important for the building to be rebuilt and we can move back because United East is 100% volunteer based. None of our staff, none of our volunteers get paid. We don't have government funding. We fundraise from private sectors every year and we depend on members' donations as well. But running all this program was never funded. We are self-funded, we are a volunteer organization, and one of our major concerns is being able to move back to 70 Mulberry Street after the restoration and be paying the same affordable rents that we've been paying in order for us to continue our service to the community. We serve a lot of new immigrants, youth, kids, and also residents of the community. All of the tenants have been working together, and we appreciate DCAS and the city have invited us to be involved in this process, from retrieving our stuff, the demolition, the future plan. We have been assured by the mayor and city officials that we will return, and we just want to make sure that commitment will stay regardless how the building is going to be built, whether it's going to be expansion to include additional space, added organizations, but this is important for this building to stay in the community, and it's important for us 5 tenants to come back and continue our service. Quinton did mention where we are right now, but we're nowhere. We have an administrative space that is provided to us through DCAS, but we can't run our service. The space does not allow us to run services. And we continue to go to other organizations like the YMCA, PS 124 to have activities before the COVID-19 that closed the entire city down. But we will have to continue with this until 70 Mulberry Street is rebuilt so we can move back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Echo. Thank you so much for sharing your opinions and thoughts. Next, I would like to ask Nancy from MOCA to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you to the members of the Manhattan Community Board 3 Land Use Committee. Jackie Wong, thank you so much. And the community members who have called in tonight, thank you so much for your support over these last few very difficult months for all of us. MOCA could certainly not have gone through the aftermath of the fire without each and every one of you, so we're deeply grateful. My name's Nancy Yao. I have the honor of serving as the president of MOCA. This month, our country celebrates Asian Pacific heritage, yet as a country, we still struggle to understand the contributions of Asian Pacific Americans. We struggle to properly recognize the hateful, discriminatory, unconstitutional nature of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 that was executed 138 years ago this month. An act that stated that Chinese are endangering the good order of American life. The stories, lives, and journeys of Chinese in America during that period of time and the period thereafter is exactly what the Museum of Chinese in America does. We document, we research, we present, we share. We do this work not to say that it's our turn or it's our time. We do this work to make sure that others can see American history through a critical perspective, making their own connections with their past. On January 23rd, the 5-alarm fire devastated us. We are so deeply grateful to Councilmember Chin, DCAS, Quinton Joe, our friends, DOB, FDNY, NYPD, other city agencies. You have worked tirelessly to salvage Chinese American history and our own dignity, and MOCA will always be indebted to you for that. We stand by our neighbors, HT Chen, CBC, United East, and Chinatown Manpower, where my mother, in fact, learned job skills in English in the late 1970s. MOCA underscores the important role that 70 Mulberry plays as a home for children to dance, adults to learn skills, seniors to socialize, associations to gather, and most critically, in our mind, history is to be recorded for future generations. MOCA encourages a stabilization of rental rates for the existing tenants. The fire did not change our budgets, and a rise in rental expense would certainly put undue pressure on organizations like MOCA. It is imperative to maintain aspects of the history of 70 Mulberry and the new design and outfitting. Within MOCA's salvaged 85,000 item collection are a number of artifacts related to 70 Mulberry and PS 23. We would be so excited to curate an exhibit of 70 Mulberry's history in the new space. And we encourage DCAS to respect the historical components of that building. And MOCA would love to engage in that process, knowing that we are active members of this community. Alongside our neighbors at 70 Mulberry and other community representatives, MoCA is committed to playing a thoughtful role and an honest and truthful one in the visioning process for 70 Mulberry. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. Next, can I have Edgar from CPC to say a few words? Edgar? Edgar Perella?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just unmuting myself.
Yep.
How are you, everyone? I want to thank the opportunity to actually speak. Thank you, Community Board 3. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Community Council Member Margaret Chen, Assemblywoman Yulin, all the elected officials who have been very generous and ongoing supporting CPC in regard, and all the other tenants in regards to our hard times. I want to especially thank Quinton and DCAS for the untiring work that they've done in helping us with regarding the building. As you know, CPC has been in the building with all our fellow tenants for over 30 years. We've been providing senior services for close to 300 seniors on a daily basis. Not only do we provide a means for a warm meal, a place for arts and recreational activities for seniors, but it's a place, as well put by Nancy, a place for them to socialize. And without that, without the building, it's very hard, and especially now during these trying times during this pandemic, it's very difficult to have our seniors content without a means of aspiration or something to really motivate them. And having this building rebuilt again is what they're thriving for and hoping to see in their near future. Just a couple of things I do want to add. We can't wait to see 70 Mulberry rebuilt and have the ability to be moving back in. As stated with our fellow, as everyone who stated earlier, CMP, Chendansa, MoCA, as well as UEAA, we really want to see the rent stay as is. As Nancy put it very well in the sense, you know, before the fire, we were set in with our rent because of fire and because of all these talks, we're hoping that nothing changes that and that we still go in with the same rate and the same price that we're all doing with that. We believe that the building should be preserved and respected for the historical significance and the agriculture of the architectural design. So I'm hoping that when we have these conversations, when we rebuilt the building, that all these things are kept in place and kept in mind, and just not change it into a monstrosity within the neighborhood, but keeping it in place and keeping it in a sense that open to the community and open specifically as well as all the members who have been in the who've been occupying the building before. We hope and we look forward that everyone involved, that the tenants have a say in the decision making and will be part of the future of 70 Mulberry. Again, thank you for everyone, and especially the city of New York as well, the mayor as well, who has been very supportive in this process with all the support. Thank you again.
Thank you, Edgar. Before I go on, there is a correction I have to make, and that is for Olympia. I think you are right. Even if the city dispose public properties without changing the zoning, they still have to go through the Europe process. I just want to make that correction. And before I allow more public members to comment, I just want to share with you guys that the district office actually received some letters from public members, and for the interest of time, I cannot read every single one of them, but I would say 5 of them is asking to create more new space with current zoning, and also want to see the current tenants to be able to move back to the future building, and also wants the future building to be remained for exclusively for nonprofit use. And also they hope the key architectural elements could be honored and also incorporated into the new design. And there are also 3 letters just to show support to MoCA and HT Chen and other tenants. And there's 1 letter asking the current building to stay, the lower floor to stay as is, so they can build something on the rooftop. And there's also another letter from a Chinese Chamber of Commerce. They suggest to add affordable housing to the future building. And that's all I have about the letters. Next up, I'm sorry?
Jackie, I'm sorry, it's Michael. There's also, I just sent you a private chat with a comment from somebody who is a member of the public who's in the meeting right now but doesn't have a microphone. So I can read it or you can read it.
So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna let the public members to speak first, and then I'll see what I can do with Grace Toy's comment. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna open up the for everyone to speak, and please be reminded again, for the interest of time, everyone please keep your remarks within 2 minutes. So I see, and you can raise your hand so I can call your name in the order these hands are raised. The first one I see Eric.
Hi.
Eric?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
So I won't go into too much depth about my deep emotional attachment to the site. My wife's grandmother went there, and I remember picking her up in the 1970s, and I understand what a critical resource this is. My focus would be how to get you back online as fast as possible. When you look at a total demolition of the site and building back a completely new building, I can tell you from my lifetime experience in construction that were I to start tomorrow morning on this, between design, environmental, engineering, and permits, the fastest that we could do this in the private sector would be for a new building like 4 years. In the public sector, where I used to work and build things for the city and for the state, you're looking at 50% to 150% of that number. So you'd be looking at anywhere from a 6-year to 10-year timeline. The next part that disturbs me is restoring and rebuilding an existing structure is always way less money than building a new one. You're looking at, in the private sector, something like $600 to $1,000 a square foot to rebuild a building of comparable and so in this COVID environment where we have no money, my deep-seated fear is that you end up with what amounts to a vacant parking lot for like the next 6 to 10 years in the very heart of Chinatown. And I think Olympia picked up some points, and I'm going to ask some questions now. I see a skid steer loader running around the first floor of this building, and they're telling me this building is unstable. That machine weighs like 8,000 pounds. It doesn't make sense to me. They're telling me that you have rotted wood joists in this building, and rotted wood joists take years to happen. So my quick question for you is, what's the demolition budget for this project?
Thank you. DCAS, do you want to respond, or you want to, you don't want to respond at this moment?
So I can answer, I'm sorry, I think it's Eric. Eric, I can answer your quick question in the budget. The budget is around $6 million.
Wow, okay.
Thank you. Next question, next hand I have is Mitchell. Mitchell, go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is another example of the city really not respecting the community. That visiting session that you spoke about, that should be done before the decision was made to demolish this building. This building is one of the most significant historically in Chinatown. It's at the very heart of Chinatown, both literally and figuratively. Generations of Chinatown residents have personal and collective histories intimately involved with this building. And it's part of the state and national register historic district. It's contributing to that historic district. It is the first school building designed by C.B.J. Snyder, who was the superintendent of the Board of Education. And it was a prototype for the reform of school buildings, not only in the city, but in the country and modeled throughout the world. He built in paired windows to bring extra light into the classrooms. He designed the building walls of masonry and put an auditorium in, which was a first for school buildings. It's something that if any federal or state money is involved in, it needs to be reviewed by the State Office of Historic Preservation. It's in a revival style that we will not see anymore today. Those masonry exterior walls are withstanding, they're solid, they can be braced with new construction. So I'm all in favor of restoring the exterior of the building, rehabbing it for state-of-the-art dance studios, storage for the community.
Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you. Next, Colin Chen. Colin? Colin, are you on?
Video. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question for the gentleman from DCAS. All right. Has there been a cost comparison as to a gut and restore, as to a full demolition and then rebuild? All right. And if there hasn't, why hasn't there been?
Quinton, do you want to respond to that question? Or you want to?
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute there. Can you repeat the question for me again, Colin?
Yeah, sure. I was wondering, has there been a cost comparison to a gut and restore as opposed to a full demolition and then rebuilding a new structure? And you know, I agree with everyone who spoke earlier before me that we need to keep the architectural lines of this. I don't see the ground floor needs to come down. Right, and if there hasn't been a cost comparison, why hasn't there been?
So we have done some cost analysis to the building for both that. I would turn it over to Joe to talk about your latter part of the question in regards to keeping the kind of the architectural feel, aesthetics of the building. But we did do a cost comparison, and that's where we ultimately made the decision to move forward, along with other things, to move forward with the full demo. Joe, did you want to add anything to his question?
No, it's just that what we have to restore in the inside of the building is just astronomical. And it cost me 10 times more to restore what's inside the building, to stabilize that building. The fact of the matter is, no matter what I have to do, the first 3 floors are already gone and taken down. I have no choice. That's the building department's order. And based on that, I have to make this building a seismic design building. And you got cast iron columns. You cannot take a seismic load out with cast iron columns. Your foundations aren't made for that. The building isn't. Yes, you got masonry walls out there that are heavy. In a seismic zone, some of those masonry walls are your enemy. The way you don't want rigidity, that much rigidity in a seismic zone. But besides that, you know, we did do a cost analysis, and it would cost us more to restore what's there and then build up on top of it. Because no matter what I do, I have to put a new foundation in, and I have to go up with new columns, new beams, and everything in the inside. Just the brick on the outside, the red brick, most of it's going down. It's all coming down, and the rest is down. The windows are just typical windows. They'd be energy windows that look the same. There's no reason we cannot mimic what's there. The brownstone that's there, if you take a look at it, it's deteriorated. It's got a lot of Dutchman. And all the carvings and stuff, a lot of them are deteriorated. You can't make them out anymore. The stone has, you know, it's a soft stone to begin with. It's over 100 years old, and it needs to be replaced. Yes, we make a stone? We could get stone similar for the first floor. You wouldn't put a fire escape on a new building. You would put elevators in a building. So there's a few things you would do different, but you could definitely restore it to make it look the same. And in the long run, it'd be cheaper because I still have to build the top 3 floors. And the reason why you saw a bobcat on the floor, we are short in the basement, and there was one section of the floor there that was made of concrete for a fallout shelter. And that was the reason why that area we were able to ride on it. But we do have shoring underneath.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Can I get a quick follow-up to that?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, can the city or anyone really put a price on history?
That thank you, Colin. That is more like a statement than a question, I guess. So next, can we? I'm gonna move to Kay Black. Kay.
Thank you. Actually, I'm Carrie Culhane, and I am an architectural historian and the author of the National Register nomination for Chinatown in Little Italy. And this is a nationally significant historic district. Yet in this district, there are no local landmarks that tell of the Italian-American or the Chinese-American experience. And I think that this is a huge oversight on the part of landmarks, and I've been petitioning them for weeks to try to pay attention to this, actually for years, but most recently acutely for weeks. And for a number of reasons, this building should have been a landmark long ago, and Mitchell addressed many of those reasons. Architectural innovation, the first New York City public school designed by C.B.J. Snyder, the home of the Chinatown History Project, which became MoCA, and an essential community center for so many organizations, HC Chen, Chinatown Manpower, United East. This is literally, as everyone has said, the heart of the community. With an FAR of 6, the site could easily host a 6-story building with a bonus for community use. Damage to the upper floors is actually an opportunity to restore the historic roofline, and I have behind me a photo of what it looked like historically. And that corner tower is actually a symbolic campanile, which was a reference to the Italian community that was centered here at that time in the early 1890s. I don't know if the city has explored the use of tax credits, but this site is eligible for 40% tax credit. And even though the city owns the building, they can get investors to buy the tax credits from them. Therefore, 40% of the cost of rehab would be taken as a credit. So that's actually a very valuable incentive to rehab this building. With the extra FAR that is available beyond what's currently built, a very modest rooftop addition could house more community space. And I think it is really essential to say this needs to stay a community center. And given the overwhelming significance of this building, any proposal for the future of the site needs to consider preservation and even landmarking as an option. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would have Fanny Yip. Fanny? Is Fanny here? I'm gonna go to next person.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. I was
okay.
trying to unmute myself.
That's
So
okay.
I just want to say that, the mayor said that it was going to be restored. So I don't understand what happened to that. It's like all of a sudden we're hearing that it's going to get demolished when the mayor made a big speech about how it's going to be restored. And it sounds like restoration is possible. So I don't understand why there's this demolition schedule already. I mean, what happened to community engagement, And speaking of which, community engagement, how are you going to do community engagement? I mean, shouldn't there already some sort of community engagement already? And another point is that, we're losing the aesthetic of Chinatown every day to private developers. We do not need another big glass ugly tower in Chinatown, and we definitely do not want our tax dollars going to do that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Fanny, and I really agree with you about the community engagement points. That is actually the most important thing about all the public projects. And next, I have Olympia. Olympia.
Yes, thank you. So my question was actually for Mr. Wagner, the engineer. Just because now it's becoming apparent that there is this huge issue of preservation and the fact that the decision of demolishing, it sounds, is a monetary decision. The building could be retrofitted. So in your analysis that you described, did you also consider what most European countries that have a lot of landmark preservation do, that is preserving the facade and rebuilding inside? Have you done that cost analysis as a third option?
I actually done that before in other states, but in this particular instance, I don't think the stone, I think we should replace it in kind and build it, you know, I'm all for building it in kind, but I think you should replace the stone with a little more durable stone right now. The other thing is you would really want to change the way your entrance is to the building. You really would like to enter the first floor without going up steps. You would like to bring that down, bring the basement a little lower so you could actually, when you come in on the first floor between Bay and Mulberry, that's grade level. So when you come in, you're not walking up a flight of steps or trying to get to an elevator, because the rear entrance, the way you're coming in, is the illegal entrance. The whole rear courtyard is illegal the way it is. There was an extension put on the building that was never C of O. It was built before 1977, but it was there, and there's no record of that extension in the back being put on. So there's a lot of things in that building that isn't right to begin with. And I think even for the community and the people occupying the building, you may want to, we could restore it, make it look relatively the same, but yet take away the fire escapes and have interior stair towers and everything to lead to the outside. And utilize the property, you know, get the most out of the property, because if you go to the back, you see a lot of jogs in and out the way it is. So, you know, there's a lot that could be done. I mean, yes, you can, if you need to stabilize the building, I have done that before, the facade. But you would take it only down to the brown brick. The red brick is too common and you wouldn't want to match. You could never match the same color if you got 3/4 one color, and 1/4 the other color. So you wouldn't want to do that anyway on a new building.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Olympia?
I mean, my concern is that, you know, again, I understand what you say about accessibility, ADA, not having steps, etc. However, if this is a landmark, that's the whole story. There are things that are grandfathered that just don't make sense, but they have importance that is beyond that. But
excuse me, landmark is not ADA is not grandfathered in anymore. That I have is mandatory. We're not grandfathered in on any ADA. ADA has to be met now.
But you can meet it with other ways, not by tearing down the facade. That's not the only way you could meet it. You could do ramps, you could do other things. But fundamentally, my concern, Jackie, here is that it sounds like there are a lot of decisions that are made without any discussion, and maybe they would worth of a public discussion because they're not, you know, mandatory. There is discretion here made by DCAS, and so it's great that we're having this conversation. Maybe there should be, I don't know, another conversation
where we go more in
detail.
Right, I agree with you, Olympia. I think you're
but they should stop demolishing in the meanwhile.
So well, for the interest of time, I'm gonna move to next speakers. Amy Chen. Amy?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm here tonight just to show my support for Chinatown's iconic 70 Mulberry Street community space and all of the tenants displaced by the fire. I mean, it goes without saying that the fire blew a huge hole in the middle of Chinatown. And rebuilding 70 Mulberry Street must be a priority capital project, and it should take precedence over all other community capital projects at this time. I strongly say that it must be done and completed before the first shovel of dirt for the proposed jail. For decades, the city neglected 70 Mulberry Street, And for centuries, they neglected Chinatown as a whole. And this is an opportunity to right some of those wrongs and build back better than before. And as the city develops a plan, I advocate for restoring the historical structural facade, as others have said, in whole or in part, and the significant structural architectural elements of the building. The city has to have the will and the imagination to create something special on this corner in the heart of Chinatown that will serve as a beacon for our community. And 70 Mulberry Street must remain a space only for nonprofits, keeping in line with the current zoning regulations. Whatever is built should also take into consideration the needs of the former tenants and ensure that they can return to affordable, customized spaces that suit their needs and operations. This structure should also make accommodations for other nonprofit and community-based organizations that serve Chinatown. And I just want to give a special shout out to advocate for an expanded theater space for Chen Dance Center, which is critically important for the future of the neighborhood. Chen Dance Center Theater was the only professional theater space in Chinatown. It was not only special, it was not nearly large enough for the community's needs. In major cities around the world, we've seen how good design can bring the community closer together and imaginatively weave in the historic past to a thriving future. And right now is hugely important, especially now. And the very survival of Chinatown hangs in that balance. So thank you, everyone, for.
Thank you, Amy. Next, we're gonna go to Cora Wu from UEAA.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm a member of UEAA. UEAA has been a big part of my life for the past 7 years. I've attended the 70 Mulberry and worked out there with my team for quite some time. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, almost every other day of the week. It's taken a lot from us as a community, from us as a team and as an organization to not have a home for the next couple of years. It might even be 10, 15 years. That's a long time. I think what I'm looking for here is more transparency and visibility into what's happening. I think you're kind of hearing that from everybody that's on this board meeting right now. So my question is, how does DCAS and the city plan on involving the community more, moving forward in the plans, the reconstruction, the design, all the decisions that are being made, rather than having community constantly have to beg, reach out, and ask what's happening. What does the city plan on doing to involve the community?
That's a very good question. Does the DCAS want to answer that question?
So I think the community visioning process is the first opportunity and of a continual engagement with both the local residents and the community to decipher and determine what's going to happen at 70 Mulberry. We're committed to continuing to provide the community with up-to-date information on what's going on at the building. I think this was the first good step in really communicating what has transpired over the past couple of months since the fire. And so we plan and are open to continue this dialogue.
Thank you so much, Quentin. The last question I have is Jan Lee. Last comment.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for everyone on this call and all the great information that you've provided. I want to ask DCAS, how did the building get this bad? How did you, as the owner of this building, get this building to be so bad that the wires were crumbling and that there was a fire caused by none of the tenants, that this was something that was negligence on the part of the city of New York? And now you're coming to us with no schedule. You know it's going to cost $6 million to tear it down. You don't have a schedule as to when it's going to be brought up to street level. How did it get this bad? You owe that as an entity who is looking after this building, just as the city would hold a private sector landlord accountable. How is this city answering to the fact that now that we know the fire was caused by negligence and that it was electrical wiring or whatever it was, that was under your watch? You have a responsibility to answer to this community. You can see the passion, you can see the love of that building. How did you let it get like this? We deserve to have that answer. And obviously, Quentin, you probably weren't even born when a lot of us were occupying that building as students. But the fact of the matter is, this is a city issue. There was a trespass even when the fire was out. So you're not taking care of it. How do we have any faith that DCAS is going to take care of this building in the future?
Quentin, do you want to answer that question?
So I think I'll first start by saying I appreciate your expression, but as the FDNY investigation report states, it does not indicate that any actions either by the tenants or the city were the cause of the fire. So I did want to make sure that I clear that up with you first. And I think that I hear you loud and clear, and I understand your concern. When you talk about the conditions of the building, you know, we take that back and we will address it as we think through the next part of the rebuild process.
Everyone on this call knows that the building was in horrible condition on the upper floors. It was never taken care of well. And the reason we lost our archives is because the city of New York neglected our building. How do we trust the city of New York when you come to us and you tell us all of these things about schedules and expenses, when you have proven to us that you let the jewel of our community dissolve the way it did in front of our faces?
So again, I hear you loud and clear, and I appreciate your comments and your sentiment. What I can tell you, as you mentioned, I wasn't there during that time. What I can say now is that we are fully committed to being transparent with the process moving forward. And if there's any information that comes our way, we're happy to discuss it with you. And both your concerns are valid, and I appreciate you expressing them. But what I can offer you and tell you is that, you know, moving forward, we will be transparent and have been transparent with everything that has transpired post the fire. And I can only commit that we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Quentin. And so for the interest of time, I see Damaris is here. I'm gonna to allow 2 more questions, and the last 2 questions will be Rob Hollander and Damaris. Rob.
Thank you, Jackie. I want to speak first as the secretary of the Chinatown Working Group, a community planning group created in 2008. Our community zoning plan would limit buildings in the core of Chinatown to 85 feet high. Any development beyond 85 feet high would violate the plan, as well as endanger the neighborhood and its community. In addition, the plan identifies 70 Mulberry Street as a building of significance. Now, that plan was signed by 42 community groups in Chinatown in 2014, and since then by another 18 groups, the Chinatown and Lower East Side community organizations, including Community Board 3. As a resident of Community District 3, who worked for many years in Chinatown, and as a published historian of Chinatown, and in particular of its architecture, I consider 70 Mulberry Street not only to be the most beautiful building in Chinatown, but also I find it a unique design in all of New York, specifically for its stairwell tower with its diagonal windows. It's a brilliant, innovative design found nowhere else in the city, to my knowledge. Facing the park and visible from 3 directions, it's distinctive and irreplaceable in the streetscape of Chinatown. For the city to fail to preserve it would be a municipal embarrassment akin to the city's failure to prevent the destruction of Penn Station. Now, 70 Mulberry Street is, of course, not on the scale of Penn Station, but its design is maybe more inventive and surprising. It's one of the great unique structures of New York, and just because it's in Chinatown, the city shouldn't assume that it can demolish it with indifference. Thank you. I'll include that in the record.
Thank you. And next I have Damaris.
Yeah, I mean, I just, my comments are really brief. You know, I really support what the tenants of the building and people who are, you know, in and around Chinatown and their sentiments about the preservation of the building. I just want to say that I think that moving forward, the next time that DCAS comes to us or to any part of our community, that they should come prepared with information about how they are going to engage the community. It is not enough to just say that we plan to be transparent. It is not enough to say that we will engage them, but you need to work with those tenants and interested stakeholders to come up with a community engagement plan that is representative of the Chinatown area and all its diverse needs. And And I feel like we shouldn't accept anything less. This is clearly, you know, a historic building. It has served this community for so long. And it's just unacceptable to me that at this stage, there's not really even an outline for what could be, you know, considered involvement and input from the community. And, you know, at this point, people are not trusting for, I think, a lot of good reason. And if you come back with a real plan, you know, maybe the tone of the conversation can change.
Thank you, Damaris.
That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I think you are absolutely right. I mean, we can ask the city to commit to a more detailed engagement plan. What would be the plan to engage the community and also the transparency? That those two things are very important. Thank you, Damaris. So so let me see. So the public has a lot of opinion to say tonight. I see the chat room is overflowing, and I'm reading those chats as we speak, even it's a little bit busy to do that. And before I move to committee discussion, I just want to go back to a lady who, participants who doesn't have the audio or video to talk about her point. Basically, I think she typed something in the chat box. I just want to go back to that lady. Just give me 1 second. I think her name is Grace Toy. Let me see. Grace, can you copy and paste your message to the chat box again? Okay. All right. I can't find her because of the scroll. Okay, so I have it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olympia. So I'm just gonna briefly read it. So Grace Toy, hi, I'm a Chinese poet and writer based in New Jersey. I have a long history with Chinatown. Being born in Chinatown, my dad worked in various restaurants and my mom in its garment factories. Later, I extended at Mocha and I worked for Chen and Dancers. They were some of the first organizations where I learned formally about my Chinese Asian American roots. I urge that 70 Mulberry Street be restored justly. We need to maintain this heart of Chinatown. Thank you, thanks a lot. Okay, so next I would like to go to the committee discussion. So we've been hearing a lot tonight. A lot were thrown at us, and I'm just wondering if committee members have any thoughts about that or any opinions you have.
I mean, do you have options, like, because obviously, like, should we be doing a resolution where we articulate the points that came up in today's conversation? There are some very important points that I don't think DCAS was able to address, also because they may not be in their purview, like landmarks and stuff like that.
Right. So I think we are going to vote on Reso. And I think what we can do is that we can add all these points to the Reso. We can demand DCAS to engage us, engage in a transparent and a process that fully engage the local community and also recognize the historic nature of this building. I'm gonna go to Lisa. Wait, how do I, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
While this was going on, I was starting to draft a resolution. And I probably could think of a few more things. I haven't finished it 100%, but I have like a page worth of stuff already.
So I also have something, maybe we can like try to work together in a bit.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So Linda, do you, so I'm sorry, Linda has a hand.
Yeah.
Linda.
A brief point.
Okay.
I think we've heard quite an overwhelming sentiment for preservation of the existing building. And DCAS has got a plan to demolish the existing building. So we have a point of contention here. So I believe that our resolution should recognize that community sentiment regarding preservation.
I agree with you, and I also hear opinions about needing more spaces, creating more. So we need to put both of them in that resolution. And I just want to add that normally I myself as a member from Chinatown as well, I normally would really support the preservation of building of historic nature. Especially, I really have a love for brownstone buildings, but for this particular site, I agree with the certain preservationist opinion that brownstone buildings are built to last and they can be restored. But I also agree with the city that the cost to restore brownstone building is actually very high from my own experience.
We have not heard those comparison of costs at all.
Right.
Other viewpoints that would say it would cost less.
Well, that's
there
why.
And build up. But
Right. And there is a opinion to ask for the comparison. I mean, that's just my general feeling about it. But I also want to mention that from my general observation, Chinatown really in need of community space, whether this is for cultural use or for nonprofit use. We have a big need for it, and I think my general observation is that Chinatown has the least community space compared to other neighborhoods in CB3. So, and I mean the fire.
Jackie.
Yes.
I raised my hand to answer exactly what
sorry.
you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I actually, architecturally, this is not an either or. Mm-hmm. You could definitely both preserve the building and expand,
I agree.
have more space. So it's not an either or. I think what we should reflect in our reso is that we want both, and there is a way to do it.
Yes, I agree with you, and I don't think we need. This is not conflicting. So let me.
I'm not able to raise my hand, so I just wanted to make a comment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think the reso should definitely include what's clear from the community, that we should demand that there is some type of community engagement before the city continues to deconstruct the building beyond what is obviously necessary to protect the safety of people and the building surrounding it. And I think also we should reiterate in the reso that it's clear that the community does not want the building sold to anyone, and that we don't want the land use to change. It's the public facility and institution land use, the entire lot should remain for public facility and institution in perpetuity. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on what we should include in the reso.
You're absolutely right. So Trevor?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I know I heard from a lot of speakers, but I really wasn't always able to distinguish the public members from the actual tenants of the building. And I heard both sides of those who wanted preservation and those who wanted more space. But can you just give me a summary of what the tenants who actually occupy the building had said? Because I'm just trying to struggle with those two things.
So from my understand from the what tenants said, I think most of the tenant wants bigger space. They want more space, but they are hoping the rent will remain affordable in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And timely rebuilding and the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry?
And timely rebuilding.
Right. So how about this? Michael, can you pull up the resos, the draft reso that we prepare? So everybody can see it?
Yes, I can do that. Lisa, you said you worked on some things. Do you want to email me what you have? So,
Sure. Do I have your personal email?
I can private.
I can also share my screen, I guess, on Zoom, but whichever is easier.
I think it would be easier to share Michael's screen because so we don't have two screens going back and forth.
Well, we can. Yeah. Why don't we share this? I'll read through it, and then Lisa, we can add edits. And if there's a lot, you can send me privately separate language. Okay. Can people see the screen?
Not big enough.
Sorry. Yeah, I have the map of the zoning lot behind. Okay, can people read that? No.
No, go
It's
with.
a little hard.
Yeah.
It is very. So committee members, would that be, well, because is Michael doing the scrolling and you don't have control of the speed of the scroll? Do you want me to email you? Would that be easier?
That would be nice, thank you.
So let me just email you really quick.
While you do that, do you want me to read the reso?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Michael.
Sure. And this is not incorporated the majority of what was discussed here, so obviously we can add more. So it says, whereas on January 23rd, 2020, a 5-alarm fire destroyed the top 3 floors of the historic 5-story 70 Mulberry Street building and caused significant water and structural damage on the other floors as well. Whereas the 70 Mulberry Street building was constructed in 1893 to house PS 23, the first public school built by C.B.J. Snyder, who went on to oversee the construction of more than 160 schools in NYC, many of which are New York City landmarks. One of its innovative features was the basement auditorium, the first step in the movement to provide community centers and neighborhood meeting halls within schools. After the school closed in 1975, the building became home to 5 Chinatown nonprofits and cultural institutions: Chinatown Manpower, H.T. Chen and Dancers, Chinatown Senior Center, operated by the Chinese American Planning Council, and United East Athletics Association, and the archives of the Museum of Chinese in America, all of whom are currently displaced. And whereas the diversity of community uses and services these organizations provide to Chinatown residents include but are not limited to programming for seniors, vocational training, workforce development, small business assistance, dance, performance and education, archives and artifacts from 40 years of MOCA curation and collection, and youth education and athletics programming. And whereas the Department of Buildings and Department of Citywide Administrative Services have determined that there has been extensive fire damage on the top floors, as well as additional water and structural damage to the remaining floors and building shell, and that the most appropriate course of action at this time would be full demolition. And whereas Chinatown is an important cultural destination in New York City, yet 70 Mulberry Street was one of the only spaces in Chinatown that supports and houses nonprofits and cultural institutions that provide cultural programming, education, and training to the community. And whereas Chinatown has very little community facility space and the neighborhood lacks accessible spaces for community meetings. And whereas in a January 27, 2020 statement, Mayor Bill de Blasio committed to rebuilding at this location and working with current tenant organizations as the process unfolds. And whereas while demolition has begun at 70 Mulberry Street, the process and timeline for planning a new building and starting new construction is unknown at this time. And whereas in this challenging time for city finances and operations due to COVID-19 and budget shortfalls, it is particularly important to make sure that there is a well-conceived plan to ensure these vital resources are returned to the Chinatown community as soon as possible during this mayoral administration. Therefore, be it resolved, the city should formally commit to redeveloping the 70 Mulberry Street space for community use as soon as possible. And therefore be it resolved, the city should establish and share with the community a clear and transparent timeline for planning, design, and construction of a new 70 Mulberry Street space, which will include regular community outreach and appearances before the community board to receive input and ensure community needs are addressed and the community is represented in the planning process. And therefore be it resolved that the current tenants will have a right of first refusal for community facility spaces that are at minimum equivalent size to their pre-fire units with rents capped at pre-fire rates. And therefore be it resolved, after guaranteeing community space for the existing 70 Mulberry Street tenants, the city should ignore all opportunities for additional community serving uses at this location, all of which should be guaranteed in perpetuity. And therefore be it resolved that any redevelopment should include commemoration of this building's importance in the history of our city. So I think right off the bat, the resolution is not, I don't think it makes it clear that demolition, I think that we could parse out a little bit more of the fact that it's not absolutely necessary for to have a full demolition from what we've been discussing. And then also the things I mentioned before about keeping it in the public trust and ensuring that public facilities and institutions land use remains the same for the whole lot in perpetuity.
Mike, before we discuss it, can you incorporate Lisa's stuff? This way we don't do double the work.
Did Lisa send her email, send an email to Michael yet?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so I don't share my email inbox with the 150 people on this call real quick.
While you do that, I just agree with you that we should not include in our resolution an assumption that the building will be demolished and rebuilt, because so much discussion of the possibility of partial preservation and expansion.
Also, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I also feel like the resolution and the part where it talks about community engagement and transparency makes the assumption that presentation is the same thing as engagement, and that the community board is the only representation of our community. So I think that, you know, we should be clear that it's not just presenting what the city decides, but creating a process outside that residents can be engaged in or stakeholders can be engaged in to give real meaningful input.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Could I read a couple of my therefore clauses that I think might be a little stronger?
Can you enlarge the screen, because we cannot see that?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Oh, you have it. Oh, I see. I've always had mine.
Did you want to read it, Lisa?
No, if people can, unless you want me
see.
to. I didn't know it was up. I was still on my Word version.
That the city of New York retain ownership of the building, and that is used to be continued into perpetuity as a community facility. We already have the perpetuity as a community facility. So you want the city to have the ownership of this building?
No, we don't have it in perpetuity. We have the way it just says the guaranteed community facility space for, it doesn't say explicitly to me personally that the entire lot should remain for community facility purposes in perpetuity.
Yeah, Lisa's language is clearer and stronger, I feel, Jackie.
Okay, so let me see. So we can replace, Lisa, where do you want to add that be resolved?
I don't care, wherever you want to put it.
Let me see.
Why don't we go through the whole thing and see how many of these we just want to insert, and then we can worry about where they go.
Okay.
Or who cares where they go.
That all the occupants of building at the time of the fire being given the right of return we have that, at least the same square footage at a cost that is comparable is the rate charge at the time of the fire. Okay, we have that. We have similar thing. We have similar thing, not exactly the same language, that the design of the rebuild be done with a strong emphasis of retaining the architectural and historical heritage of this structure, which is very good. This one, we can replace the last one and that the building be redesigned and reused exclusively for the use of either for nonprofit, neighborhood-based organization, or possibly include affordable or supportive housing. Okay. Do we want to add the housing here, or do we want to open for the community to have an input first? Just like Damaris said before.
Well, keep reading, keep reading.
Okay.
It goes on to talk about that.
Okay. That
also, I see that Jim Selton has his hand up. I don't know, Jim, do you have something to say that is urgent?
Why don't we go through like all these points and then we go to Jim?
Yeah, it's not urgent. Please continue.
Yep. That the building be redesigned and okay, we have that. That every step of the process of moving this building forward toward redevelopment be done with the full meaningful participation of the prior tenants, residential neighbors, elected officers, and community board 3, that the participation should be at every phase of the planning, from decision about either the renovation, right? You have a yeah, I think that about the renovation, I think that is a typo. That's a redundant versus the reconstruction, the redesign, the construction, and finally the administration and management of the final building. That this community engagement process begin immediately, and that DCAS return to CB3 with a more specific plan describing how this participation would be accomplished no later than July meeting of the Land Use Committee. That the city must do everything possible to expedite the reconstruction of the property with the goal of reoccupying it within 3 years. I have no problem with most of the points. Jim, is there anything you want to add?
You know, I'm sorry, I was coming in and out. I may have missed some of what was mentioned in Lisa's additional points that may have addressed this. But I just want to flag, and this is not an endorsement of, you know, making a decision on this one way or another, but I just want to flag that, you know, one thing about to look out for about setting into stone the land use in perpetuity is that you're then, you know, you're basically you're saying no to two things that stand out in my mind that are a possibility with as of right zoning. May not be preferable, but they're a possibility. And that's, you know, ground floor commercial uses for small Chinatown businesses that are struggling right now. And, you know, those could be small spaces. They could be serving the local community. And the additional one would be, you know, some sort of affordable housing or senior housing. You know, that's a whole other bag of worms to open up and get into, but it is allowed by zoning. You know, it wouldn't be allowed if you were to say that this is the only land use that can exist here. So, and I think like in previous conversations about this, we heard rumblings about that from different community stakeholders. We didn't hear it so much from the public tonight. So, you know, that's not pressing that issue one way or the other. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. It's something to be aware of.
Thank you. Olympia.
Yes, so I was thinking maybe we should add some whereas about today's hearing and the people who spoke today, and highlight clearer what Linda talked about. So the fact that there is obviously a disagreement with the assessment of DCAS about the demolition, and that this decision is at their discretion, right? They did it because they did all these financial studies and they decided on that. However, what has become clear today is that we could say, whereas at the hearing, the community wanted to understand, you know, and have input on that decision making. I don't know. This is not a Europe, so I don't know what we can ask, but I think make it more clear, because right now we're just mentioning what they stated, but we don't clarify that this is a decision made behind closed doors with numbers that they run that we have no way of assessing their veracity or, you know, the criteria that they use. As someone in the audience said, like, how do you value culture? So this is obviously something that is very important, and I think we need to clearly state in our reso.
Thank you. So Lisa, I look at the points you made. A lot of them are very similar to the reso we already have. So now the point is that how do we merge two documents? And also, I think certain, like the reso we created has more or less have some assumption, based on some assumption that the building will be demolished. And I think we can add certain language that we want city to be open about that.
I mean, I think the only way we can ask that is if we come, you know, Linda said it, we have at the break point, right? So if we say suspend the demolition calendar for October 2020, because if they don't suspend that, if CB3 doesn't ask for that, all the other things that we're asking, if they demolish the building, they have no meaning.
I agree.
I was thinking we could add a whereas somewhere in there, something, whereas there is strong community support for preservation of the building. We should not, you know, it's too soon to assume that that's not possible.
I agree.
I don't think it should be a whereas, it should be therefore, right? I mean.
Well, the reason I said, probably both, but back in the, somewhere back in the early part, it says, it expresses that it's like already decided that the building's going to be demolished.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
there's no community input.
I propose that we remove what I've highlighted here, that the most appropriate course of action at this time would be a full demolition. I think we should take that out.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
Do we, I'm sorry, do we, are we free to edit this right now, or do we have to do motions and things like that?
No, I think, so I think what we should do is that we want to move the reso first, and then we can modify the languages. And if we think that that part, I mean, if the majority of the committee think that part want to be removed, then we will remove it.
But I think before removing it, rewrite it, use the information that you have there, because those are important information that they evaluated like that. But that there is disagreement is what is missing there.
Can we let Jim talk first? Jim?
The very brief, this is, I don't know if DCAS is still on the line. This might help. I don't think this changes how you want to phrase, or sorry, it doesn't change the sentiment that you want to document to support preservation, but it might help to get clarity. So I was understanding from them that the decision for demolition has already been made. Whether we agree with it or don't agree with it and want to state that opposition in the resolution is a different question, but it might be helpful to get clarity on whether that decision has been made or not. I don't think it's been clear in the discussion so far. I'm personally not clear on it, but I don't know if they're still on.
Quentin is still on.
Okay. Quentin, do you want to add, do you want to answer that question?
Hey, yes. So the decision has been made to move with full demo. So as we currently state, the city is moving forward with full demo.
So Quentin, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So is there any way to change that, or it will move forward in there, and there's no way to stop the demolition of the building?
So based upon the assessment that we gave you, that's what we're moving forward with. You know, as I always say, I'm open to hearing what feedback folks have and talking with folks about their concerns. But based upon, you know, our assessment that Joe articulated earlier today and other factors, we have made that decision. So it's already in the process. And as we described earlier, you know, we while we didn't go through the timeline or itemized timeline exactly when each floor is scheduled to be a part of the demolition process, the idea would be that demolition would be over or done in October of this year. And so we are moving forward with that timeline.
Can you share that timeline with the board?
Yes.
Well, how about this, Linda? Can we say something like, due to the amount of people also mentioned about preservation for this building, so we advise the city to take another look to see if there's any possibility to partially preserve the building.
Yeah.
Language like that, would that be?
Furthermore, that this decision was made with no community input
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
and I'd like to say, this is Damaris, I'd also like to say that, you know, this is a very critical and crucial time in Chinatown, and you know, the stakeholders, residents, and community organizations really need our support because they are going through a substantial amount of hardship right now due to COVID-19. This is not the time for the city or any of us to be rushing to further demolish or change the integrity, the historic, you know, integrity of this community. And so I feel like I haven't seen enough at this point to convince me that this is the only way.
I think we need to speak with a sense of urgency. I agree with the comments. I think it's completely inappropriate that there was absolutely no community input and the city has just decided to demolish the site point blank.
And is there any process that, because someone mentioned that they reached out to Landmarks, I think an expert from the National Building, like a woman who's a preservationist who has been petitioning for this. So is there any process in which a letter can be sent from CB3 to Landmarks to understand what is the status of this? Or a copy of this reso? I don't know. What's the best way to do it?
Is Carrie still there? Because
I
I know
am here, and I have been in email communication with LPC, but they have been dragging their feet on an official response. And they are well aware, I hope, that there are no Chinese American or Italian American landmarks, and certainly not a lot of landmarks in the core of Chinatown. But they have not come up with an official response yet.
Could we attach, if this is a formal preservation organization, could we attach their testimony to this reso or something like that?
Do we normally do that? I don't think we normally do that, right? I mean, we can ask the district office to find out more information from it.
It would be, it depends what you, so look, I mean, we would not, we can't send a letter on behalf of the community board or endorse something that wasn't voted on by the community board. I mean, we can't. You know, my thinking, if you wanted to do something more specific to landmarks, you know, that's not really what the stated agenda item was. I mean, you know, the proper procedure would be to probably put it on landmarks next month. You know, then you're talking about the what, like, you know, 3-4 more weeks. So, you know, it seems like you might just want to document your concerns about preservation in this resolution because it's going to go out in 2 weeks.
I agree.
Rather than go through the process of a formal letter to landmarks, yeah, just because that's not really procedurally appropriate, and it wasn't the agenda item, and it would be slow to do that. You can still do it in addition, but you know, it's kind of a different agenda item. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're happy to hear it in landmarks.
Yeah.
But also, there's no harm in sharing the committee's feelings about this with the Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, sorry, I should clarify. You know, this reso can be sent to landmarks, absolutely.
Right, right.
Yeah, to LPC, absolutely. Yeah.
So we should go back to the reso, to the draft reso, in the interest of time.
So why don't we edit the whereases first and get that in its place,
Right.
and incorporate the therefores with Lisa's?
Right. So why don't we? So I see the first whereas we don't have problem. We should not have problem with it, right?
That's fine.
Okay, and the
And
second
the
whereas.
second's fine. They're
And the
just
third-
descriptive.
Right.
This is hard for some of us to see, so maybe you can make just a tiny bit of reference to what is in each whereas that you're saying is okay.
And Damaris, I also emailed you the file if you want.
Oh, I thought it was being changed. I'm sorry.
No, we have not changed nothing. So the
All right,
file-
because Lisa presented a reso as well, so
Right.
I don't know if we're adopting any of that language into this reso. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, no, that's a good question. I'll still mention it because I think people, there's still 130 people on the call. I think they're still interested. So the first was just the fact that there was a fire. The second just gets into the history of
Thank you.
the third again is just mentioning the history and the uses in the past of the building. I don't think we have any issues with the third either.
This is the one I have an issue with.
The fourth, right?
The fourth.
Yes.
Yeah. I also realized when we mentioned to take that last sentence out, this whereas is saying this is the position of DCAS. So maybe we can say, and that that DCAS has determined without community input that the most appropriate course of action at this time would be full demolition.
Right.
And should we add in here, I heard that this building is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. If that's correct, I think we should say that.
That is correct.
That is correct. It's
I think that's what Carrie said. Carrie Cohen.
It is New York State and National Register.
And it's nationally significant.
Yes.
Let's put that in the second whereas. Or should we just create a new whereas maybe, since it's still...
I would create a new whereas because this is a very important point given the fact that they are on a schedule to demolish it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the...
I guess we could say the building is contained within the Chinatown Little Italy National Register Historic District.
But isn't the building per se registered?
No.
No, you can say that it's a contributing resource to the historic district.
Yes. Is a contributed resource, yes. Rather than contained within.
Oh.
Replace contained with is a contributing resource. Yes.
The Chinatown and Little Italy, what was it?
National
Historic Registry.
National Register Historic District.
Right. That's correct. Yeah, there's no comma in there.
Okay.
And then you can say, and is of national significance.
Is it architectural significance, we should say, or?
Yes, because of C.B. Snyder and the radical things that he introduced into school construction.
If we say architectural and cultural significance.
Yeah, yes. Architectural and cultural significance.
Carrie, this is for this is for committee discussion. So.
Okay, so we added, whereas the building is a contributing resource with Chinatown and Little Italy National Register Historic District and is of national architectural and cultural significance.
Good.
So we want to go back to this DCAS paragraph.
Yeah, you put in the without community input. That's good.
Yeah, I added, and that DCAS has determined without any community input that the most appropriate course of action at this time would be a full demolition.
Right.
And would it help for us to say, and therefore is in danger of, or has been, he said, is now being considered for full demolition? Or is now being planned for complete demolition?
replacing that last part, Lisa?
Yeah.
Right, and is now being without community input and is now being planned.
Yeah.
For full demolition.
And I think we should also say clearly that the way they made this determination is for cost effectiveness, because it's apparent that there are other solutions, but they would cost more. So the determination is not structural,
Why do we have to
basically.
include that?
Maybe if they involved a preservation architect, they would find that it wouldn't be so expensive.
So, but fundamentally, because when it says determined, if they determined that structurally that had to be demolished, we couldn't be containing that, right? You know what I mean? That's why I asked that question. Because if it was structurally, irreversibly intact, we could not be having this conversation. What became apparent in their presentation today is that they made a cost analysis, and that's what conduced them to decide to demolish.
Right. Right.
Well, I'm not entirely sure I want to, I mean, the financial consideration is the only thing, because they also talk about like trying to expand the spaces.
Yeah, but you can expand the spaces and preserve the building. That's what I'm telling you. Architecturally, one is not excluding the other.
Well,
that's done all the time.
Mm-hmm.
New stories are added on to old buildings.
Exactly.
Well, my only objection is that they might be, that might be a winning factor for them, that it is cost effective. And it could be a decision-making factor on their part.
It has to be one factor, right? But
yeah, but we can also say we didn't see the numbers.
We haven't seen the numbers. We don't know what the difference is.
And again, there was no community input. So I think that, you know, us speculating about these things without having legitimate community input.
Right.
So maybe what we can say that they only considered two scenarios. They didn't consider the scenario of preserving only the facade. Even though he said that they did consider it, but he thought that the masonry was not replicable or something. But anyway, it felt that we needed more scrutiny in that decision making.
I'm in favor of leaving as is. I mean, do you guys have other
I am
thoughts?
too.
I think it's okay.
Okay, then we move. Can we move to the next
Thank
whereas?
you, Olympia, but I think it's good like this. Let's just.
Did he say rebuild? Did Mayor de Blasio say rebuilding or restoring? I thought I heard one of the local people say he committed to restoring the building.
He did on television.
On television. So let's not say rebuilding.
Okay. Sorry, I was on the top one. Are we comfortable with these two paragraphs?
Yeah.
Jim, do you recall if the mayor said rebuilding or restoring?
Yeah, I'm not keeping track of every single public statement, but I included the link to the press release from the mayor's office in the draft resolution, just in case this came up, and because, like, frankly, yeah, I'm not keeping track of his exact precise language, but we could reference that article because at least it's written and documented and it's posted on their website. I mean, I forget off the top of my head what exact language was used, but let me try to open that up maybe.
Yes, right now.
You could find.
Yeah. I didn't hear it, but I heard someone testifying earlier that he used the word restoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody used the word restore.
Well, it's easy enough. While you guys are writing down, one of us could look real quick.
Okay,
so I'm looking at it. It says the building can be rebuilt or restored.
That's what de Blasio was quoted saying?
Yeah, I mean, you go to the...
Sorry, this is mean. I just want to say that I had him literally say restore, and he committed to it, and it was literally the day of, and he promised us. He promised us on the ground.
I should mention that. I think it's really it's messed up that, you know, the city is telling our elected officials that they're going to do these things and have legitimate community input, and then they don't. You know, I think that's completely.
Yes.
Why don't we use both rebuild and restore? That's what it says in the press release.
Yeah, it does make plenty of reference to rebuild, but I think the context of the way that he uses rebuild is, I don't read it as we're going to rebuild the whole building, but like, you know, when you're rebuilding as to make something whole. That's just me. Not that we can explain that in this. So I think we should use our best judgment.
Use whatever language he used. If he said rebuilding or restoring, then that's what we should say.
Yeah, because he said until the building can be rebuilt.
I agree.
So should we say rebuilding? He said rebuild?
Yeah.
Or restore?
Or restore, right, or restore.
We said or.
Rebuild or restore. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
I think it's, yeah, okay.
And then can we move the next one? While demolition has begun, is the process and timeline for planning a new building is unknown at this time. I think Lisa has a stronger language, if I remember correctly. Lisa, do you have a stronger language for that?
Yeah, I like that. Therefore, be it resolved better, actually. But thank you, Michael. I just think it's a little stronger.
Oh, I didn't write this.
Whoever wrote it, thank you. I didn't write it.
This is you're talking about the whereas?
Whereas.
Yeah, I didn't have a whereas, I have a therefore.
Right, but in here it's also a therefore. It says, therefore, be it resolved that the city should establish and share with a clear and transparent timeline, design, construction, and yours is stronger.
Right, I agree that I'm not sure which one Jackie was talking about.
No,
but
I think we can keep Lisa's stronger language at the be resolved clause, and whereas this whereas is actually okay, because this whereas will lead to Lisa's stronger language on for the be resolved. So I mean, unless you guys have problem with the language here,
I just think the language should be stronger. I know we mentioned it earlier, but I think we should say something like, whereas the demolition has already begun.
Underway.
And is scheduled to finish on October 2020.
Yeah. Is.
Maybe it's just me, but if we're saying that the demolition has already begun, I think that weakens our case for saying that he should consider a restoration versus a demolition.
So I think that you're right. I think the problem is what we saw in today's pictures is they're cleaning debris from the really like destroyed upper floors. So I think maybe phase one of clearing the building is not the demolition. We can phrase it like that. Plus, Mike, when you changed it, you changed the meaning of the sentence, because is scheduled to finish in October. You needed to say has already begun and is scheduled to finish in October, because the planning and timeline for starting a new building is still unclear. So that part should stay as it was.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. That's my bad. Process and timeline for.
You're working under a lot of pressure. Don't worry, you're doing really well.
Yes, agreed.
Maybe we should adapt the Google Doc in the future. We can find a way everybody can view.
This is okay. So I moved it to the front to say demolition has already begun and it's scheduled to finish in October. I actually, on that point, I think it's really important to mention that, again, the demolition began without community input. I mean, I don't think, since it's already happening, I don't think not including information about what's going on will help make our case if that's.
I hear you.
That's right. And somewhere we need to say, stop, wait.
Yeah.
That's going to be a therefore.
Yeah, okay.
We're really dissecting this one.
Yeah. But wait, then now we have to finish this sentence on the first whereas on this page. So now it just says, and the timeline for planning a new building and starting new construction has not been determined.
Jackie, you also have a hand up from Ellen.
Hold on 1 second. Ellen?
Hey, it's Ellen. So I don't want to throw much of a wrench into this, but I just want to note this for the committee. I sit on transportation, and on Tuesday we were talking about safe streets. And as we talk about opening up, the city and also into Chinatown and supporting local businesses, we have to recognize that we can't open those streets currently where 70 Mulberry is.
All of the organizations shift very rapidly in a matter of days.
Because Bayard and Mulberry are closed. So, for whatever reasons, whether they're demolishing it or they're still needing to close those streets up fully. So it would be nice if there was a plan somewhere to have those streets be opened up where it's part of safe streets, it is accessible, and people can walk down those streets.
Do we want to add this to this resolution, or we want to contact DCAS separately, just voice the concerns for the small business people?
I mean, if we didn't do the landmark thing, we should, this is a transportation thing. I mean, we can add some language.
I just feel like we can just ask the DCAS to maybe open up half of the street, half of Bayard, half of Mulberry for transportation for traffic to move. But I don't know if it is directly related to this resolution. I just a little thought about it.
Is there someone from DCAS now who can answer that question?
Let me see. DCAS, do we still have do we still have Quentin with us tonight?
Jackie, I'm still here.
Hi, Quentin. So do you want to answer that question?
So the question was in regards to see if we could be able to open up Bayard
Mulberry.
Street.
Yep, and Mulberry.
And Mulberry. So currently Mulberry, currently Bayard is on the side where we have kind of the site selection. So the site where the construction workers are actually actively working. So that will remain closed until that part, that side of the building is actually completed, or we deemed it safe to actually open it back up. I believe, if I'm getting my streets correct, Mulberry is open on one side, and unfortunately we will not be able to open it fully until all of that is completed. So to answer your question, we won't be able to open Bayard until that side is deemed safe to do so. And Mulberry is the same thing there. If you actually are on the side, you'll notice that some of the trucks as well as the trailer and things of that sort are actually on the Mulberry side. So that's why half of that side is also closed as well. But the pedestrian sidewalk on the Bayard Street is still open. I think I heard someone say that that's not open. The pedestrian side on Bayard is open. One part of the street on Mulberry is open, as well as the sidewalk.
Does that mean you?
I don't mean to be technical, but it's open on the Bayard side insofar as one person, like me, walking in one direction. It's really like if someone else is coming towards me, we have to move sideways in order to avoid each other. So that's how narrow that opening is.
And I think so. I guess the question we have right now is that do we want to add the opening of those streets to this ratio, and then we can go back to talk with DCAS about how soon they can reopen the street or later. But the question now is that we want to add that to the.
Jackie,
yes.
This is kind of issue that our district manager would say is an operational issue. It really doesn't belong in the resolution, but it definitely belongs with the office to work.
Right, I agree with you. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. So
can we move to next whereas? And by the way, do we still need DCAS representatives? Because I don't want to, it's almost 9 o'clock. I don't want to keep them for too long. Do we still need them?
I mean, we constantly bump into new questions.
I think it's good for them to, we're staying, we're not getting paid, so why shouldn't they?
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's, in the interest of time, let's just move on. Where were we? We were the second whereas, right? On this.
The last whereas, yep.
Okay. In the Chinatown finance. I don't have problem with this paragraph.
Nope. Okay. But I think maybe it's too vague. What does it mean? Are we asking, because I think we're asking for two very important things that may mean the opposite. One is we want them to move fast because we don't want people to be displaced forever. And the other thing is we want them to stop demolishing because we want them to reconsider the plan about the reopening of the building, the restoration. Maybe, should we maybe phrase this clearly here? Because otherwise, because someone could frame our asks as contradictory. Instead, I think they make a lot of sense. We want both of these things.
I'm not sure I'm following you. I don't see a contradiction. We're going to say in the therefore clauses that we are demanding that they.
I don't see any problem with this.
Okay, go ahead. If you think this is clear enough that these are the two asks that we have, we can do it therefore.
Therefore be resolved clause.
Yeah.
So let's move to the therefore be resolved. The city should formally commit to redevelop the 70 Mulberry Street. So, well, since we are moving to therefore be resolved clause, I think we need to also look at Lisa's.
Can I suggest that we just change this one to say the city should commit in writing to redeveloping the 70 Mulberry Street for community use and retaining it as soon as possible hold on. For redeveloping and retaining in perpetuity 70 Mulberry Street as community for community use as soon as possible.
I agree.
My only concern is redeveloping. Is this the word we want to use, or should we say?
Go ahead.
The city should commit in writing to restoring.
I think redeveloping is good. I would like to keep the options open at this point for either. I feel like I want more information about what would be in the public interest.
And redeveloping includes restoration.
Exactly. It leaves us the options.
Yeah, I think we should leave it open for more community discussion because, like we've been saying, there has not been enough community input. So
exactly.
Should commit. So I'm sorry, you said redeveloping and
retaining in perpetuity. And I like community use better than community facility because that does keep the option open also for the possibility of affordable housing.
Yeah.
Right.
Are we okay with this clause? Can we move to the next one? The city should establish, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just added the, I think it makes more grammatical sense.
Okay. Yeah. The city should establish and share with the community a clear, transparent timeline for planning, design, and construction of a new space, which will include regular.
And this one I would suggest we replace with two of the ones I suggested.
I agree.
Which was it? These two?
No, that one I think we've covered. Or maybe it's the next three. These.
Let me drop them in, and then if they're redundant, take them out. So, but we think we should take this part out.
We'd have to change the formatting, but.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think you want to remove the original therefore be further resolved clause.
This one.
Yeah.
Is everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Yes. You have a double that to clean up on third line.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, I'm sorry, I moved it.
Okay, can we go to the next be resolved clause? That this community engagement process begin immediately and the DCAS return to CB3 with a more specific plan describing how this participation would accomplish no later than July, okay?
Why don't we say June? Why give them 2 months?
I like that idea.
Lisa?
That's fine.
Okay.
I just I couldn't even remember if we'd established the June agenda yet.
Yep.
Nope.
So now we have agenda on it.
The date is tomorrow, I think.
Oh, okay. Time to spare, 12 hours.
And then next, that the city must do everything possible to expedite the reconstruction of the property with the goal of reoccupying it within 3 years. Within 3 years or?
Yes, within 3 years.
Okay.
I know that's ambitious, but let's.
Hope, at least we can ask for.
Well,
I think
that's a goal.
because we don't want to wait for too long.
With the 3 years, what I might recommend, and maybe 3 years is fine, but you got a commitment from this administration to do this work, right? Whether it's realistic or not, they committed to it. When is the end of this administration? I'm forgetting.
Next year.
Next year. So obviously reoccupation is not happening. Well, I mean, ideally it would. Okay, so then never mind. I just wanted to say, a goal I think should be to put pressure on this administration to follow through with as much of it as possible, because you know what happens when agency projects get stuck between administrations. But that's okay.
Lisa, can we add something, something like at least a deal is reached or agreement is reached within a year or two? Can we add something like that? Would that be helpful?
Agreement for what? The question would be what could
Right.
be something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't know. I think that we've said that the process should move ahead cooperatively starting immediately, and that the whole thing be done in 3 years is about the best we could do. But if anyone has any other suggestions, I'm open.
Okay, if not, then we're just gonna go with
Yeah.
Linda. Linda,
Yes.
do you have anything to say?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so if not, no comments, then we're just gonna move to the next clause. That, where is that? Let me see.
This third one, sorry.
Which one? Okay, sorry. That the current tenant will have a right of first refusal for community facility space that are at minimum or equivalent size to the pre-fire unit with rents capped at the pre-fire rate. That makes sense. That's
on a square foot basis. That's all I was saying. If somebody gets twice as much space, then they wouldn't be paying the same amount. They'd be paying the same on a per square foot basis.
You had that in one of these, right?
Yeah.
I think Jim also had that in the draft.
Should we just change it with what Lisa sent originally? This.
Can I see the comparison? Let me see.
I can read it. It says that all of the occupants of the building at the time of the fire be guaranteed the right of return upon the completion of the restoration/reconstruction with at least the same square footage and at a cost that is comparable on a square foot basis to the rates charged at the time of the fire.
I mean,
Nice.
I don't see that much difference between the two paragraphs.
I think it's just a square footage comment.
In, you know,
Yeah, it leaves open the possibility that they have a larger space, which I think is on the table, but that the rate, you know, it's some specificity that helps with the clarity.
I mean, I don't see I mean, I guess both paragraphs capture the essence of what we want. So
it's more clear, the one that Lisa says. It's more precise, not more clear.
I think Lisa's is more precise.
Yeah, because I have to agree because of the possibility that that a larger unit, you know, ends up being what we're talking about here. I think Lisa's captures it more accurately.
Sort of on the model of the Essex market where.
Yes, exactly.
So are people comfortable with me replacing it with Lisa's language?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Are we comfortable with this restoration / reconstruction or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And then we go to the next one. After guaranteeing community facility space for the existing 70 Mulberry St tenant, the city should explore all opportunities for additional community serving uses at this location, all of which should be guaranteed in perpetuity. This is from Lisa, or this is from Jim?
This is from Jim.
And I think Lisa has something more descriptive, if I remember correctly.
Well, the one I like this one better actually, except that I think I'd like to stick in the affordable housing or supportive housing as being a possibility.
I just want to say that that would entail change of ownership, right? I think DCAS almost never owns buildings that have.
That's right, unless they did it as a condo unit.
Oh, that's true.
Did we say previously? I'm sorry, it's just getting late. Did we say previously that we would not support any change of ownership?
I think it's the first.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you might want to. I mean, another option is to just put some qualifiers on that, like you would not support a change of ownership, like other than one that facilitates 100% affordable housing, or like, you know, I don't want to get too specific, but you know, you don't want to close yourself off to things that might be.
Should we say just privatization instead of change of ownership? So as long as it is public, so we oppose.
Well, yeah, but it could be like a
privatization.
not-for-profit. You know, typically, you know, it wouldn't be like.
But it would. Yeah. My problem with that is it's still public land that's held in the public trust, moving private land owned by a private actor, and I think that's inappropriate, and I think that we should, you know, I think we should see if you know, if people in the community want that and really are asking for that, then that's a conversation. But nobody mentioned housing.
Oh yes, in the letter it did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe we should say. Sorry, go ahead.
Could you scroll up a little bit? How was the first one worded in this version? I know mine said no change in ownership, but.
I don't think.
Guys, I just got a typo. The last whereas, it says insure instead of ensure. You should change it.
As soon, wait, I'm sorry, where?
The last whereas, it says a well-conceived plan to ensure these vital, I think it's ensure these vital resources.
Yeah, it's EN instead of IN. The first letter in the third line of that whereas.
And sure, yes.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at the first therefore clause, this writing of it, unlike mine, doesn't say that it should retain ownership by the city.
I think that we should put it explicitly.
Great.
Just replace it.
For community, well, so now we're saying we can't do housing because of this? So if,
Well, if you retain the ownership of the building, city typically does not own like housing.
Put it this way, and I don't know if this helps, right? But you could kind of conveniently not get into the specifics because you know that were the ownership to change, you would have to review it as a committee through ULURP. I mean, it's a little bit of a cheap way out of having to define your terms, but it does, my point is we're not going to lose an opportunity by not mentioning it now.
I hear you. I like that.
Maybe instead of community facility, we could say in perpetuity for the public good or something.
Or for community use, as it said before.
Right, like try to leave the language a little just vague enough. Yeah.
This continued in perpetuity for community use.
I'm just wondering, like, if we say, what would be the difference if we say to retain the ownership of the land as opposed to the ownership of the building?
Because you're saying you're like there'd be a land lease rather than the actual.
Lease, just like because if the city owns the land in perpetuity, that also implies that whatever develops above the land is not going to be entirely privatized.
I don't know that it says that at all.
Is that a?
No, because you could own the land and lease it.
Yeah, it doesn't say that.
Mm-hmm. But you also have for in perpetuity for community use. So, I mean,
I think it's okay as it is now. No.
I agree.
As you edited, yeah.
Any transfer from it being community use to something else, especially, I mean, if it's privatized, it has to go through ULURP. So that would be a whole different discussion.
So we need to add the strong therefores now.
Yep.
Okay.
We need to add, I'm sorry, what part?
The strong therefores. Therefore, we want DCAS to seize the schedule for demolition by October 2020.
At the bottom. Right? So, sorry, I don't think we went over the last.
Right.
The last therefore, or was it the last two therefores? I think that, I'm sorry, this section, instead of, again, prescribing what should happen, I think that we should say the city should explore, the city should work with the community when exploring opportunities.
I think it's covered above where we're saying that we want them to have community input. We don't need to put it again here now, no?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
So do we need to say explicitly including supportive or affordable or senior housing, something like that, or
can you go higher up to see what we had added?
We didn't add anything about housing yet.
Yeah, there's no mention of housing.
No, but where it says that every step of the process of the moving of this building forward toward their development be done with full meaningful participation of the prior tenants, residential neighbors, elected officials, that participation should be at every phase of the planning from decision about the renovation versus and reconstruction, the redesign. You can add there and program, and then you cover it because it can be program as housing, program as, I don't know, a circus, whatever they want.
And take out the extra "the" before either.
I'm sorry, this was this paragraph?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where is the program going?
Where it says for decisions about, is this either needs to be there? Is there an extra either there?
Mm-hmm. No, it's an extra "the."
Okay. About
either the renovation versus the reconstruction, the design, the construction, the program, and finally.
Okay.
And now we're covered.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so also the last one, I don't like it because it's defeatist, because you want to commemorate its historical memory if we agreed that it's going to be demolished. So since we're fighting for them to maybe maintain the facade or like find other things, maybe, you know, we should take that out.
Yeah, say something like we've been discussing, something stronger.
I don't know about you people, but my brain is
I think we did it. I think taking out that last one
right.
completes it. I think we're good.
Yeah, please, because I've been on Zoom calls
No,
since
we need
11
the
a.m.
suspension of the DCAS demolition program.
Oh, yeah,
schedule.
yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. Sorry, I thought we put that in. Sorry.
And
Oh, yeah, that's what the last one should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, can I say DCAS? Or I have to write their agency after people know.
We used DCAS up above already, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Therefore, DCAS should immediately.
With 3M, immediately.
Must immediately.
Sorry. Spelling in front of 100 people.
You're doing fabulous. I'm impressed.
Stop
I thought
demolition.
we were taking out what's now the second to last, the one right above that.
Yeah.
We are
Oh, okay.
But I'm just going to make an executive decision to let DCAS know that they can drop off.
Okay.
Thank you.
DCAS, you can drop off.
I'm sorry. So we wanted to take this one out, or we wanted to leave
Thank
it?
you for allowing us to participate this evening.
Thanks, Quentin.
Thank you, Quentin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that's weak. Let's just get rid of it.
Take it out.
I think so. I don't know if anybody else has an opinion.
No
No, I suggested, I agree with you.
Okay.
It's nice to wind up with stop now.
At 70 Mulberry.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I think we did a pretty good job of, the hardest thing in the world is joint editing a document.
Yeah.
And also do it on the spot. That is actually very challenging.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
This is one thing that Zoom really facilitates, though.
It's true. It's easier to do it here than in
yeah,
public.
impossible to do.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we should consider having Google Doc because it may have gone faster, because we could have suggested edits to you and then it would be faster, you know.
Did we figure? We discussed this. I'm sorry. Did we resolve the issue with the
Excuse me,
the
can I
precision?
interrupt for just a minute? Jackie, if you guys don't need DCAS anymore and they haven't gone yet, could you tell them to go?
Yeah. I thought Michael already.
Everybody's waiting for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Michael
Quentin left.
Drop off.
Yeah, they're going, Susan.
Okay, they've been texting me to see if they could go. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that, Susan.
Pobrecitos.
So, Michael, why don't you, could you read the whole reso, I guess?
I'm sorry. Before we go through it, I just want to make sure. I think hopefully this will save time. Did we resolve the language about city ownership? I know we had the discussion. I just forget what we settled on.
This is what we have.
Yes.
The ownership of the building.
Oh, right. Okay, so the distinction, ownership of this. Yeah, okay. And right, because the idea being a change of ownership would come back before the board anyway.
Yeah.
Just like you suggested, Jim.
Yeah, no, I know. I could not remember what was captured.
You're getting old, Jim.
So if we are okay with the changes, can we have Michael maybe read the whole reso again?
Oh, no.
I'll read it. So,
I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I think since we went through it, I feel like it was pretty.
I don't think we need to reread this whole thing.
if you guys think so, I mean,
definitely not.
I move to approve.
I'm just gonna say that it's standard to read it before it's voted on, and doing so will alleviate you wanting to make changes at full board like you typically intend to do.
But we are all fried, Michael. So, you know.
That's fine, but I'm just saying that when you come before board and you want to make edits, I'm going to remind you that you had a chance to read it before you voted on it. And you
Okay, we can read it, but we still
Okay, but wait
reserve
a minute.
our right to change,
don't think
to do
that's
amendments
fair.
in full board, Michael, please.
Yes,
I
I
mean,
agree. I agree.
This
Yeah,
is inappropriate.
So I actually wanted to read it again, just be more formal so that we could adopt it and I mean, it's just like we always do. So how about this? Michael Paris spent a lot of time editing it. I'll just read it through myself so we can move to, and I already heard Olympia wanted to move it, right? I'll be real quick. How's that?
I'm happy to read it if this is what CB3 prefers, as long as they don't take away our rights. If we want to amend it in full board, that's our right.
Yeah, so I mean, I can read it. That's okay. So I'll be really quick. Whereas on January 23rd, 2020, a 5-alarm fire destroyed the top 3 floors of the historic 5-story 70 Mulberry Street building and caused significant water and structural damage on the other floors as well. And whereas the 70 Mulberry Street building was constructed in 1893 to house PS23, the first public school built by C.B.J. Snyder, who went on to oversee the construction of more than 160 schools in NYC, many of which are New York City landmarks. One of its innovative features was the basement auditorium, the first step in the movement to provide community centers and neighborhood meetings halls within schools. After the school closed in 1975, the building became home to 5 Chinatown nonprofits and cultural institutions: Chinatown Manpower Project, HT Chen and Dances, Chinatown Senior Centers operated by the Chinese American Planning Council, the United East Athletics Association, and the archives of the Museum of Chinese in America, all of whom are currently displaced. And whereas the building is a contributing resource within Chinatown and Little Italy National Register Historic District, and is of national architecture and cultural significance. And whereas, Michael, can you pull up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were reading from mine.
Okay, so whereas the diversity of community uses and service these organizations provide to Chinatown residents include but are not limited to programming for seniors, vocational training, workforce development, small business assistance, dance performance, and education, archives and artifacts from 40 years of MoCA curation and collection, and youth education and athletics programmings. And whereas the Department of Building and Department of Citywide Administrative Services have determined that there has been extensive fire damage on the top floors, as well as additional water and structural damage to the remaining floors and building shell, and that DCAS has determined without any community input and is now being planned for a full demolition. And whereas Chinatown is an important cultural destination in New York City, yet 70 Mulberry Street was one of the only spaces in Chinatown that supports and house nonprofits and cultural institutions that provide cultural programming, education, and training to the community. And whereas Chinatown has very little community facility space in the neighborhood, lacks accessible spaces for community meetings. And whereas in a January 27, 2020 statement, Mayor de Blasio committed to rebuild or restore at this location and working with the current organizations as the process unfolds. And thank you. Whereas while the demolition at 70 Mulberry Street has already begun and is scheduled to finish in October 2020, the process and timeline for planning a new building and starting new construction has not been determined. And whereas in this challenging time for the city finances and operations due to COVID-19 and budget shortfall, it is particularly important to make sure there is a well-conceived plan to ensure these vital resources are returned to Chinatown community as soon as possible during this mayoral administration. Okay. Therefore, be resolved that the city of New York retain ownership of this building, and that its use be continued in perpetuity for community use. that is used to be continued. Are there any language we want to change that, and that it is used to be continued in perpetuity for community? Okay, therefore be further resolved.
I think you're right. I think that's it's a little bit awkward.
Yeah. Do you want to change the wordings?
For community purposes, I guess we could just say instead of use here. I don't know.
Maybe say
Sorry.
community purposes, community needs, something that shows that
Or
it's
it could
responsive
be
to the
that
local.
Guys, that it continues to be so just take out the use there, because community use we chose it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It can,
Yeah, it be continued in perpetuity for,
to be it continues its designation. It's community use designation in perpetuity.
I think we could just
City of New York retain ownership of this building and for perpetual community use.
And for community use in perpetuity.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is also
Probably
another.
get rid of the end, right? Just this building for, yeah, perfect. Yeah,
yes,
great,
that's it.
excellent.
For community use in perpetuity.
Yeah, that's it.
There was another technical edit above. You forgot to put in parentheses DCAS after you spelled Department of Construction, etc. It's that whereas where it says the Department of Buildings. Citywide Services, Administration Services. Excellent.
No,
This way
only it should be
at the end.
after. Yeah.
Exactly.
Just do
No,
that.
no. Oh, well, we don't
Yeah,
use
okay.
DOB again, but
DCAS, yes. And there is one whereas that we said we were going to add and we didn't add, the whereas of today's hearing, that we heard from many community members that they oppose to the demolition, to the complete demolition. Whereas Community Board 3 hosted a public hearing on May 14, and we received written and spoken commentary from over 24, I think, people that were against the complete demolition.
I don't know.
I don't think we heard that many
Yeah.
people saying that. I think we heard from 24
Some
people, but not all of them.
Or maybe that they want more, that they don't want, that they want more transparency on the process and participation, and opportunity for participation.
That's what everybody asked, and I heard some people wanted the building to be restored, but I also wanted people hear people said they want to have more space.
Yes,
Yeah.
but we said these are not mutually exclusive, so
Right.
it's not a problem. So I said for sure say that the people, everybody said that there is no transparency and enough engagement.
Yeah, why don't we just say where's held a public hearing on May 14th and heard deep
2020.
concern from dozens of community residents and activists
Leaders.
and leaders, including concern about ongoing participation in the redevelopment process.
Ongoing meaningful participation.
Thank you.
Meaningful.
Okay.
And then bold the whereas.
And border whereas, right.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
And then therefore be resolved that the City of New York retain ownership of this building for community use in perpetuity, and therefore be further resolved that every step of the process of moving this building forward toward moving this building forward toward redevelopment be done with the full meaningful participation of the prior tenants and residential neighbors, elected officers, and community board 3. That participation should be at every phase of the planning, from decisions about either the renovation versus the reconstruction, the redesign, the construction, the program, and finally the administration and management of the final building.
It's versus, not versus. It should have a U, right?
Oh, English as a second language. Nice work. You're right.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Versus.
VURSUS.
I don't know where this is. I'm sorry.
Therefore, be it resolved.
Fourth line of that whereas that he just read, that clause that he just read. Toward the right.
Right here,
yeah.
right here.
The second one.
Wait.
Versus.
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 Perfect.
And then next, let me see, next be resolved clause that this community engagement process begin immediately and that DCAS returns to CB3.
No,
return to CB3 with a more specific plan describing how this participation would be accomplished no later than June meeting of the Land Use Committee, and therefore be further resolved that the city must do everything possible to expedite the reconstruction of the property with the goal of reoccupying it within 3 years, and therefore be further resolved that all of the occupants of the building at the time of the fire be guaranteed the right of return upon the completion of the restoration / reconstruction with at least the same square footage and at a cost that is comparable on a square foot basis to the raised charges at the time of the fire. The first, the right to return, okay. Therefore, be further resolved after guaranteeing community facility space for the existing 70 Mulberry Street tenants, the city should explore all opportunities for additional community serving uses at this location, all of which should be guaranteed in perpetuity, okay? Final be resolved clause, DCAS must immediately stop demolition at 70 Mulberry Street. Okay. Do I have someone to move to motion the
I move to approve.
Okay, in 1 second.
A second.
All in favor? Michael, you might have to do a roll call.
Yep, I'll do a roll call. Is it cool if I stop sharing my screen?
Yeah.
Thank you, Carmine, for staying.
Jackie.
Michael, I think you need to say that again because you were interrupted.
Oh, sorry. Jackie, how do you vote?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Michael, I vote yes. Dominic Berg, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jonathan?
I'm present, not voting, because I'm the co-chair of the board of the museum.
Herman Hewitt, how do you vote? I don't think he's there. Trevor Holland?
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa? Kaplan?
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. Olympia Kazi, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Damaris Reyes?
Safeway. She left.
No, she did.
No, she's muted. She's here.
No, I'm sorry. I was muted. I vote yes.
Yes.
It's Tamara, sorry.
Steve Herrick, are you here? Or Tim Laughlin? Okay, so we have 8 yes votes and 1 present not voting.
All right, so the motion has been passed, and that was fun. That was kind of enough for a party tonight. And thank you for all your time. I also want to thank Carmine, who is still here. Most of the, I think the rest of the DCAS team have left, but thank you so much for staying with us. And I know tonight is not easy, and this is a very passionate topic and subject, and I think the conversation will go on, and we really wish the DCAS will commit to a process to engage the community in this in creating a plan for this site. And so tonight is the first time that we have a meeting in 3 months. So I hope next time we can do it in a shorter time. And also I want to thank all the public members who spend their time tonight and share their opinions with us. So if no other questions, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all right.
No roll call vote necessary.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, so that would be it for tonight. Thank you. Thank you all. Good night. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Michael.